afternoon. The April 25th, 2022 Special Committee on the Chicago Casino is now called to order. Pursuant to applicable law, the chairman has determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent. Accordingly, attendance at this meeting will be by remote means only. We'll start off with a roll call. Committee members, please unmute yourself, and please note that your yes or present response will be deemed to be a yes vote when the roll call is used for a motion to adjourn, as we're not taking a motion on casinos today. So, roll call. Vice Chair Irvin.
Present.
Alderman Hopkins.
Present.
Alderman Pat Dow.
Here.
King. Alderwoman King. Alderwoman Hairston.
Present.
Alderman Sawyer.
Alderman King is here, Chairman.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer.
Here.
Alderman Mitchell.
Present.
Alderman
Did
Harris.
you get Alderman King, Chairman?
I did. Yes, we
Okay,
did.
thank you.
Okay. Alderman Harris.
Here.
Alderman Sedlowski Garza. Alderman Cardenas.
Present.
Alderman Moore. David Moore.
Alderman Moore is present.
Alderman Curtis. Alderman O'Shea. Alderman Brookins. Alderman Rodriguez.
Present.
Alderman Michael Scott.
Present.
Alderman Maldonado. Alderman Burnett.
Present.
Alderman Talaferro.
Present.
Alderman Raboyes. Alderman Wagasback.
Present.
Alderman Villegas.
Present.
Alderman Mitz.
Present.
Alderman Spizzato.
Exposado is here.
Alderman Nugent.
Present.
Alderman Vasquez.
Present.
Alderman Napolitano.
Present.
Alderman Riley.
Present.
Alderman Smith.
Present.
Alderman Kappelman.
Present.
Alderman Martin. Alderman Osterman.
Present. Present.
Right. Harry's present. Okay. Alderwoman Silverstein.
I'm present, Chairman.
7. Non-committee members. Alderman Gardner
Present.
is recorded, and then Alderman Coleman.
Alderwoman Lee as well, please, Chairman.
Alderman Lee.
Quinn is
Alderman
here,
Quinn
Mr.
is-
Chairman.
All right.
Did you get me,
Who did we not
Chairman?
hear? Alderman Cole.
Did you hear me?
Deborah, we have you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. All right.
Alderman Austin.
Alderman Kerry Austin. Okay,
Alderman-
we have I'm sorry, is that Cicho Lopez?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay. All right. How many do we have?
We have 27 committee members and
27 committee members and 6 non-committee members. Thank you for your attendance today. Said earlier, it's a reminder to everyone joining us today that the subject matter hearing and there will be no vote taken today. At this time, we'll now begin the public comment period. Out of respect for everyone's time, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We have 10 speakers signed up today, and we will start with Chris Backus.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can. Is that Chris?
Yes, it is, sir. Yes, Chairman.
Okay, identify yourself for the record and you can start.
All right. My name is Chris Backus, and I am an African-American business owner in the Chicago area. I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone present. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the wonderful opportunity to talk about the entertainment complex being brought to the city of Chicago. As an owner, and as my family has been in this community for over 40 years as a resident and business owners, I'm looking forward to the city bringing in the first and only casino. And one site to me that the city has on its own has evaluated of the finalists believed to have the largest return on investment to the city is Bally's Chicago. I see investing in Bally's and with Bally's is really an investment in Chicago residents and community building. 2 years ago, I bought a transportation business with my family in Chicago where we have 13 employees. I personally could have chosen any other state in the country to operate from, but understand the need of Chicago residents. It has allowed us to pour into a city that needs opportunity for sustainable careers and economic uplift. I'm proud of the fact that 2 of our 13 employees brought their first homes because of a career that's able to afford them such opportunities. This is what Bally's represents, not only placement into quality careers that can be delivered to a community that was promised opportunities near the Cabrini Green area, but also training for future generations in hospitality industry. I appreciate Bally's has been transparent and willing to learn. They've adapted their minority investor plan with feedback from the city. They adapted their use of the site and to accommodate the community needs. They've included a process we call in education and community building as collective impact. As a tenured faculty member at a community college, I've witnessed how collective impact can change the lives of young people. This process includes shared data, a common agenda for change, open and continuous communication, coordinating community stakeholders with mutually reinforced activities. We look forward to this type of advocation and true equity with Bally's leading the way with local, county, and state participation involved in equitable outcomes. Picture this, Bally's, the city, the county, the state, creating a hospitality leadership program to close the economic and racial equity gaps in leadership in the hospitality industry. Imagine a dual enrollment program with high school and community colleges to work on a certificate AA in hospitality management. Imagine even a model that is a reality in other states where a bachelor's is awarded at a community college for hospitality management that is sponsored and advocated for a company like Bally's. This is collective impact to equitize opportunities. In conclusion, we need Bally's in the selected area because it offers the biggest return on investment financially, upward economic mobility, and community building. I urge you, committee, to choose Bally's. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Our next speaker, Kevin Hicks. Kevin?
Chairman, I don't see Kevin Hicks.
All right, then we'll go back to him at the end. Next speaker, Zeke Flores.
Good afternoon, Chairman Tunney and members of the Special Committee on the Chicago Casino. My name is Zeke Flores, and I had the honor of doing business with the city as a minority business owner for over a decade. Thank you all for supporting small, local, diverse businesses like mine. I joined the Bally's team for one reason. Bally's has built its Chicago team with a vision of minority participation at every level and a focus on transparency. For example, the Chicago Community Builders Collective, which represents a construction team that will build Bally's entertainment destination, is minority controlled by 8 leading firms that have worked on some of the most significant projects our city has seen. As a small business owner in Chicago, Bally's commitment to minority service providers and suppliers was very important to me. Bally's commitment will ensure that more businesses like mine have the opportunity to compete and grow. Bally's has demonstrated a commitment to immersing itself in the local community, from community group meetings, listening to feedback, and making tweaks to the project along the way to supporting local charities. To me, Bally's has already begun integrating itself into the local community and city. Bally's has no other property in the market. They are conflict-free, and that means they will double down on driving businesses to the Chicago Casino. As an investor and resident, that is a win-win. As a grandson and son of immigrants, I'm honored to stand before you today and ask you to partner with a company that embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion in our great city. Thank you.
Zeke, our next speaker, Andrea Kloger.
Good afternoon, Chairman Tunney, Vice Chair Irvin, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Andrea Kluger, and I'm Deputy Chief of Staff of the Chicago Federation of Labor. The CFL represents 300 affiliate unions who in turn represent 500,000 working people in Chicago and Cook County. CFL President Bob Reiter will provide public testimony shortly to speak about labor's concerns and priorities as it pertains to a Chicago casino. But before that, I am here this afternoon to share my personal story of what workers can experience when a large American city welcomes its first casino. Nearly 10 years ago, I was a young union organizer assigned to organize workers at the Resorts World Casino in Queens, which was New York City's first casino that opened in 2011. Much like the city of Chicago did in its RFP, New York State required casino operators to sign a labor peace agreement ensuring labor harmony for all casino operations. As a result, after the casino opened, nearly 1,500 employees at New York City's first casino unionized. The casino went on that year to post $696 million in revenue. After over a year of bargaining and interest arbitration, we won a contract in 2013 that included an expansive health and retirement package, stable work schedules, and doubled the wages from an average of $10 an hour to $20 an hour. Whereas gaming workers in New York City initially needed to rely on public assistance to survive, having union representation empowered and enabled those workers to suddenly have the middle class within reach. To measure the impact that the union contract made on nearly 1,500 families, the City University of New York surveyed the workers and published a detailed report. It showed 94% of casino workers experienced a wage increase, 50% saw a drop in unpaid medical bills, 75% no longer needed to use government assistance for food and medical needs, and 68% no longer needed to hold a second job. The report also estimated that the decline in the number of workers needing to utilize food stamps, Medicaid, and federal and state city EITC credits resulted in an approximate saving of $1.5 million for New York City taxpayers in 2014 alone. The report also noted the union's role in creating a path into the middle class for Black and Latino families much in need of access to quality jobs, much like we face in Chicago today, especially as we rebuild coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially in the hospitality industry. These results highlight that when employers are required to pay their workers a living wage that allows them to cover their basic expenses, access quality healthcare, and save for the future, it's not only the workers and their families that benefit, but taxpayers and communities as well. So with that, I'm here today to challenge Chicago to do the same. Let's realize Chicago, not just for its let's realize this casino, not just for its direct revenue potential for our great city, but also for the lives it can shape and change as one of Chicago's future largest employers. Thank you.
Andrea, our next speaker is Ken Webb.
Chairman Ken Webb is not here.
Speaker will be Bob Reiter then. Bob?
Chairman, am I up?
Bob, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bob Reiter, and I'm president of the Chicago Federation of Labor. The CFL is a united voice for our 300 affiliated unions and their 500,000 union workers across Chicago and Cook County. As you know, our unions represent the heart and soul of Chicago's working class, members from every different neighborhood, of every different race, of every different background. We understand the incredible opportunities that casino will provide our city, our communities, our hospitality and tourism industries, and so much more. From the beginning of this process, though, we've stood firm that any casino in Chicago must commit to working with labor to provide good jobs that support our families and our communities. Now, you're probably expecting me to throw our support behind the proposal that's the best for Chicago's working people. Can't do that today because none of the proposals have agreed to labor standards with labor. In fact, only one even seems remotely interested in moving the conversation. We went down to Springfield to fight for this casino license with the expectation that we would have casino operators that would commit to working with labor to provide good family-sustaining jobs for our community. And we continue to hold that expectation. All three proposals and the media coverage of them, too, by the way, have focused around the developers, the high-priced neighborhoods that surround them, and the millions of dollars they expect in revenue. But what about Chicago's working people? What about the hundreds of Chicagoans that will staff the casino? What about the servers and bartenders, the parking attendants and housekeepers, the building engineers and maintenance workers? What good is millions in revenue if it keeps thousands of Chicago's most marginalized workers below the poverty line? Doesn't make sense. We understand that development, tourism, and tax revenue is critical for our city. Believe me, I understand it better than anyone. But to move forward without the commitment to pay living wages and respect workers' rights is a slap in the face to the entire labor movement in Chicago. All too often, projects like these make workers an afterthought, but not here in Chicago. Not as long as I'm here to stand up and fight for working people. Chicago is the hometown of the labor movement. We're proud of the fact that Chicago's union workers earn some of the best wages and benefits in the country. And that in turn lifts up standards for all workers, both union and non-union alike. That is an absolute fact. Chicago is a great place to live, and that's because Chicago is a union town. Now, we know how important this project is to Chicago's finances. We trust that the mayor and the Chicago City Council share our commitment to ensuring the casino not only provides the city with the desperate revenue stream it needs, but lifts the standards and wages of workers across all of Chicago. And this city council, all of you on this committee, have stood with the CFL.
Our next speaker is Melvin Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the committee, thank you all for allowing me to speak today regarding the casino. My name is Melvin Buckley. I was born and raised in Chicago. Graduated from Chicago State on a basketball scholarship in 1985. I'm a small businessman of 40 years in corporate America. My experiences started at Xerox Corporation in 1985, and for 15 years I served there. Later, I became a McDonald's owner-operator for 17 years. While at McDonald's, I was on the board of directors for 2 terms, a member of the Black McDonald's Operators Association, and served as vice president for 2 terms. My responsibilities were working with advertising agencies to ensure marketing dollars in African-American communities were proportionately balanced with the general market. After 17 years at McDonald's, I entered a new opportunity with Steak and Shake in 2018, where I built the first Steak and Shake in the Chicago limits at 1322 South Halsted. Forgive me. I started a management company and a construction company in 1997 and 2004, respectively. Obstacles have been a very real part of my business life. However, we've managed to survive. Lack of bank funding, limited lines of credit, diversity initiative programs we didn't qualify for. These are just a few challenges. But over the years, I've seen supplier diversity initiatives come and go. I've also seen programs designed to balance the opportunity for minorities fall short due to flaws and clauses in these programs, ultimately eliminating and limiting minority involvement. The Valley's proposal will not only provide jobs, but will also provide business opportunities for small minority businesses. The supplier contracts, such as security, print, transportation, and janitorial, are all areas minorities will participate in. Bally's has been transparent and open to the concerns of all parties. They continue to be flexible and are willing to adjust where possible. The revenues projected will help with pension funds, provide more police funding to help make Chicago a tourist destination and keep our neighborhoods safe. I mention all these experiences because of the excitement for the Bally's Casino proposal. The 25% minority component ensures minority participation, as well as possibilities for construction contractors and others. This opportunity is special because it rarely happens with projects of this magnitude. For minority stakeholders, this kind of return could put minorities in a position to help minority communities all over the city of Chicago. And it's for these reasons I support Bally's proposal and believe it's a win-win for the city. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Melvin. Our next speaker, Kevin Loza.
Hello, my name is Kevin Loza. I have been a banquet server at McCormick. Go ahead.
Kevin, identify yourself again for the record and speak up just a little bit, sir.
Sure. My name is Kevin Loesa. I've been a banquet server at McCormick Place for the last 20 years. I am proud to say that I'm a member of Unite Here Local 1, Chicago's Hospitality Workers Union. I was born and raised in Chicago, and my wife immigrated here from China. We are both involved in the hospitality industry. Because of my good job, we have been able to raise our two beautiful children in the home we own in the Bridgeport neighborhood. Servers like me deserve to have a path to a good job at the Chicago Casino. This means that every restaurant worker at the Chicago Casino deserves the right to join the union without fear of harassment or retaliation. I hope that every Chicago Casino applicant will sign an agreement with the Chicago labor movement to make sure that servers like me have a chance to participate in Chicago's hospitality comeback. Thank you.
Kevin, our next speaker is Vahap Siraj.
Chairman, I don't see Vahab Siraj.
Speaker Karen Kent.
I'm sorry. There is it's Vahab Siraj. Yes, I see.
All right,
Sorry.
let's try with
Can
Vahap
you
Siraj.
hear me? I'm here.
Okay,
Can you hear
identify
me?
yourself for the
Can you
record
hear me?
and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Vahab Siraj. I'm a banquet captain at the Palmyra Hilton Hotel, where I worked for 32 years. I'm also a proud member of United Here Local 1 Hospitality Workers Union. I love welcoming and serving guests from all over the world. For me, being a member of my union provides me with a path of a good job. I immigrated this country from Turkey 32 years ago. Today, my job has allowed me to buy a home in Albany Park neighborhood where I live with my wife and two wonderful kids. My family depends on my high quality care, health insurance that I get from my good union job. Believe me, I have been there during the pandemic. I almost lost my health insurance. Because of my union's fight, I was able to maintain it. And that was a nightmare for me. Every worker in the new Chicago Casino deserves a right to join a union without a fear and intimidation. That includes every restaurant worker too. We need to make sure every casino applicant will sign an agreement with Chicago labor movement to make sure service captains like me have a shot at a better future. Thank you.
next speaker is Karen Kent.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Tunney, Vice Chair Irvin, and members of the committee. My name is Karen Kent, and I'm the president of Unite Here Local 1, Chicago's Hospitality Workers Union. We represent cooks, servers, bartenders, baristas, and housekeepers across the city. You'll find Unite Here hospitality workers at entertainment venues, restaurants, coffee shops, bars, pizza joints, and steakhouses. From a neighborhood restaurant with a few bartenders who know the regulars by name to the world's largest rooftop bar on Navy Pier. From a boutique hotel with a handful of conference rooms to the largest convention center in North America, from Wrigley Field to Sox Park to the United Center. The hospitality workers we represent are immigrants, women, and people of color. Some born and raised in Chicago, others from somewhere else, all of them happy to call Chicago home. Hospitality workers dedicate their lives to welcoming visitors to our city and helping Chicagoans unwind and enjoy the city they live in with their families. Agreements providing labor harmony help hold this city together and ensure that workers have a chance to make their lives better. We know that you know that this matters. I'd like to remind you that none of the casino applicants have signed an agreement. Thousands of hospitality workers are counting on all of you to keep this in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'm going to go back to two of our speakers that were not present when I called their names. I'll try it again. Kevin Hicks.
No, Chairman, he was in a few minutes ago, but then he left again.
Right. And then Ken Webb.
Still not here, Chairman.
Okay. All right. So that would conclude our public commentary portion of the meeting. Our objective this afternoon is to discuss three finalists selected to develop a casino in Chicago. Again, to remind everyone, the subject matter hearing, no vote will be taken. We have been joined by committee members O'Shea and Curtis and non-committee member La Spada. Anybody else that's on the wants to be recognized for the forum? Before we get started, I'm going to ask my Vice Chair, Alderman Irvin, if he'd like to say a few words. Alderman Irvin?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, glad that we're having this hearing today to kind of get down and see where we are at with this proposal. This is an important financial piece for the city as we move forward when we look at the potential revenue that this will bring us. And hopefully we can wade through all of the paper and make the best decision possible for the residents of the city. So thank you and look forward to the presentation.
I think we've been joined by Alderman Jeanette Taylor, and I think we recognized Alderman Cardenas already. All right. Before we get started with the program, I want to thank all the committee members for their obviously participation, not just in all the overview proposals that we put out on what did I say? Financial analysis, minority ownership, equity, traffic plans, and the union gaming report and the preliminary report on the 3 finalists. We also, as you know, engaged in 3 public hearings at various locations around the city that were adjacent to the proposals. And we got a lot of feedback from not only people involved with the casinos, but people in the neighborhoods as to how it would affect their quality of life. I do want to start off with Jenny Bennett. Basically, maybe Samir first. Okay, Samir. Originally, there were 5 proposals. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of the 3 finalists, for the benefit of the committee members and for the public, I think on the record, we should talk how we got from 5 to 3. Either Jenny or Samir, do you want to start off with that? Because I'm sure it'll come up in some of the questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, thank you, Chairman Tunney. And maybe I'll just give some opening remarks here and also turn it over to Jenny. And I think through both of our comments, I think that will help address the question you just raised in terms of the narrowing of the field. So I'd like to say good afternoon, everybody, and particularly thank the members of this committee for taking the time to be a part of this process and for engaging on this very important topic for the future of our city. And particularly special thanks to Chairman Tunney and Vice Chair Irvin for their leadership of this special committee. As the chair mentioned, my name is Samir Mayakar. I'm the Deputy Mayor for Neighborhood and Economic Development. And we're really here today to listen to your feedback and answer your questions regarding the development of a potential entertainment district anchored by gaming here in Chicago. We know that this district needs to provide benefits to the entire city and also to each of your wards. So per the chair's request, I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about process because we really have done our best to be as transparent as possible given the nature of this very consequential procurement process. As many of you know, this is one of the largest developments in the city's history, and we must ensure that we maintain fairness to the bidders while also allowing ourselves to negotiate key terms as we make our way through this process. We have strived to be as open as possible as it relates to the procurement process and really to the evaluation of these proposals. And I want to specifically note that this has been one of the most transparent processes for a gaming RFP in the country because transparency is a key value for Mayor Lightfoot. The RFP for this proposal was released in April of 2021, and it provides detailed information on the city process, the requests for the applicants, and the evaluation criteria, some of which the chair just mentioned. And since that time, we've had multiple public meetings, including bidder presentations back in December, and the community engagement meetings open to the public this past March, in addition to many smaller engagement sessions with key community leaders near many of the sites, as well as industry leaders on the topic of a casino and its impact on the city. We've also released a very detailed 80-page evaluation report outlining the proposals and the respective initial evaluation from the city departments and outside experts who have helped us through this procurement process. We also have released related traffic studies and traffic information from each of the bidders And throughout this time, they've continuously engaged in aldermanic briefings as we have, including this one here today and many over the course of the past few months. And lastly, we've provided a platform for public comments through the Chicago Casino website in our inbox, which is a direct way for your constituents to reach out to our evaluation team here in the city. So why a casino? I think everyone here understands that the city's pursued a development like this for over 3 decades, and now is the time to make this goal a reality. The project comes at a time when the Chicago economic landscape, something that I think a lot about, has been severely disrupted by the pandemic. And the nature of the way we work, the nature of the way we do business, it's changed. And major industries like arts and entertainment, tourism, hospitality, they've been significantly impacted, as you heard in some of the public comment. So it's going to take us time to get back and surpass the 60 million tourists that we experienced here in Chicago in 2019. And coming out of COVID, we need every single tool available to spur economic growth, vibrancy, and job creation. So a nearly $2 billion entertainment destination anchored by gaming will be a catalyst for the city's recovery and will bring investment and tourism to Chicago as we recover from the pandemic. Now, there are a number of benefits to offering gaming here in the city. The CFO here in a minute is going to talk about the financial and economic benefits. I'd like to briefly focus on a few others because this entertainment district anchored by gaming will help us, number one, with jobs. You heard this in the public comment just a minute ago from the CFO, but this will create thousands of temporary and permanent jobs in construction, hospitality, and many other sectors that were impacted by COVID. Number two is equity. All of these proposals, per the guidance of the RFP, will focus on community wealth building through engaging local businesses in the development, really hiring standards throughout the neighborhoods, and dealing in minorities in terms of equity, ownership, construction, contracting, and vendor spend. So equity is a major pillar of this development. Third, design, planning, and transportation and other amenities. We know that this casino can offer a world-class design that's befitting of our iconic architectural landscape and will provide an entertainment destination for a wide range of patrons. The surrounding neighborhoods will get new amenities from restaurants to retail to open space, waterfront access in some instances, and new infrastructure. And the development itself will have a heavy focus on sustainability. It is very important that this site spurs follow-on economic development and fits within the long-term plans and urban context of the surrounding area. But we also know that there are concerns with these projects, as you see in many new developments. And we want each of you to know that we are focused on what's best for the city, and we want to hear from you on what's on the mind of your constituents. So we have many departments here today from the city and some of our outside experts to really listen to your thoughts and feedback and answer your questions on the evaluation process to date. So we are excited to hear from you and appreciate your input. And with that, I will turn it back, Chair, to you. I think Jenny was going to go next.
Thank you, Samir. Jenny Bennett, our CFO. Jenny.
Great, thank you, Chairman. And I'll also address your question just after my opening remarks. Good afternoon, Chairman Tunney, Vice Chairman Urban, and members of City Council present today to discuss the casino at the special committee meeting. My name is Jenny Huang Bennett, the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Chicago. The City of Chicago has been pursuing a casino for approximately 30 years. Every year that the city does not have a casino open, gaming activity that already exists goes to casinos in the state of Indiana to the tune of $331 million a year. Put another way, the state of Illinois gaming dollars are funding Indiana essential services. Every year that the casino is not open, the city loses $200 million in direct city revenues, and the state loses another $200 million in state revenues. That represents billions in lost revenues to the city as a result of inaction and inability to execute. In addition, there are approximately $25 million in annual revenues generated for other city agencies, such as Chicago Public Schools, Chicago Park District, and others which serve an important essential service. Casino gaming revenues pay for police and fire pension funds. Additional hotel, restaurant, sales, and income taxes, as well as financial incentives paid by the casino operator, will support the corporate fund to pay for essential services such as public safety, streets and sanitation, among a number of other services. In fiscal year 2022, approximately $1.4 billion, or or 61% of the city's annual $2.3 billion pension fund contribution, is paid for through property taxes. Approximately $329 million is paid for through the city's corporate fund. In short, the revenues generated from the casino project will allow the city to avoid raising taxes, in particular property taxes, one of the few viable revenue sources for addressing a pension liability of this magnitude. This project will create between 6,000 to 12,000 new construction jobs for nearly a $2 billion project. The city will also work with the bidders to support workforce development training programs, including hospitality training and other certification programs. The city also affirms that any one of the 3 proposed projects is being designed to create attractive space for both casino and non-casino patrons alike. The Department of Planning and Urban Development has applied an exceptionally high standard for design excellence with the goal of creating an architecturally iconic project that will integrate well with the community. Each bidder has proposed a mixed-use development that includes a hotel, retail, amenities, including expanded open park space, river walks, theaters, museums, and an observation tower. Each bidder has also provided a transportation plan that the city believes will address expected impacts on transportation in the area. We've had several discussions with a number of the folks on the committee, as well as the public, over the last several months, and have shared a host of information that Chairman Tunney described earlier. We are looking forward to the discussion today. We felt that it was important to get the special committee's feedback as we continue to negotiate terms so that we can make sure that the considerations are addressed as the city moves forward the selection of a finalist. With that, I'll turn the conversation back over to Chairman Tunney. And Chairman, I'm happy to also answer the question that you asked earlier.
Let me just bring it back to you. How do we get from 5 to 3, and what were the at some point disqualifying factors in the city's mind?
Sure. So we provided in March of 2022 a fairly extensive evaluation report, which provided a summary of all of the various bids, including the core goals that were laid out in the RFP, which is the evaluation matrix that the city used to evaluate those proposals. Within that, what was important for us to consider was the impact to MPEA. And the fact that MPA does provide for a significant economic benefit and generation for the city, which ultimately results in revenues to the city. Within that report, on page 10 of that report, we lay out the impacts to MPA and some of the critical considerations that MPA noted were important to them as we considered these proposals. Namely, that in a survey that was done of a number of their very large convention center clients, there were concerns raised about the potential disruption that a casino may have to their operations, in particular if there was contiguous space with the convention center, but also very importantly, if it is that the casino would take up existing convention center square footage within MPA's footprint, that replacement space would need to be provided before it is that the convention space could be taken away. MPA does have nearly all of their convention center space used at points during the year for a number of conventions which are booked for at least the next decade. And so as a part of that, the 2 finalists that were not, or the 2 bidders rather, that were not selected as finalists, those were some of the critical considerations that made it very difficult for those bidders to be selected as a finalist.
And to be on mute for the rest of the call. So we've got a lot of members on, many, not many, but there were certainly a number of alderpersons that were at some of the community meetings, especially those that represent those areas. So I'm going to reach out at some point to those particular alderpersons. But I see right off the bat that we have Alderman Michael Scott, followed by Alderwoman Hairston. And again, if the alderpersons from the affected areas, and let me just, maybe I'll try to get as many of them listed in advance. That would be Alderwoman Sophia King, Alderwoman Pat Dowell, non-committee member Alderman Cicho Lopez, Alderman Lee, I believe, is adjacent to that. And then on the Bally's proposal, we have Alderman Burnett, Alderman Brendan Riley, and Alderman Brian Hopkins. So those, I'm gonna reach out to some. If you don't want to speak at this point, that's fine. But I want to make sure that your voices are heard, because the three proposals impact primarily those 7, 8, or 9 alderpersons. So if you want to raise your hands, we'll get there. I'm going to start with Alderman Michael Scott, and then Alderwoman Hairston, followed by Cardenas, and then Hopkins. So, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, guys, for presenting today. Really quick question for me is something that I've been thinking about for some time, and Jenny, with your presentation, just kind of triggered it in my mind. I don't understand why, as a city, we didn't find a location for the casino first, and then back in and put a proposal that made the most money for the city or was best for the city, and have them design on land that we figured was the best for us in terms of traffic, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of all of those things that are needed. Why did we do it this way, where we let them pick the site and then we pick from them after they've picked the site?
So the reason why is because I have never run a casino in my entire life. And I can tell you that we're not casino experts. Ultimately, the casino operator knows best where it can maximize revenues. And there are only a certain number of sites in the city that have enough land mass in order to be able to accommodate a potential casino development. And so what we do know is that, generally speaking, that a casino located near the downtown area will maximize revenues. Union Gaming did a report early on in this process in 2019, which looked at a number of different sites, really kind of not particular to any site that the city may or may not consider, but ultimately just to demonstrate that a casino close to the downtown area would maximize revenues. And it was a material difference in terms of the revenue generation. So ultimately, what we want is for an operator to tell us where they think they can maximize revenues, ultimately because that revenue generation is a critical component to why it is that we're seeking to have a casino be located in Chicago.
And I understand that, but I'm sure that they all use different formulas, because it came up with 5 different sites to figure out how they can maximize that revenue. What I would, and I know that we've had consultants helping us throughout this process, because none of us here are casino operators, and none of us has done this before, and we've been trying to do this for 30 years. As you've already said, why wouldn't we have those? Why wouldn't we have those consultants that we paid money for kind of figure out? I understand maximizing being close to downtown. I believe that would probably be the best place as well. Again, I'm not a casino operator, but those were where the most folks go to recreate, go to do what they need to do. Since we do have, or why wouldn't we work with the casino operators to come up with the best case scenario where they all can maximize money? I understand why I think I understand why you did what you did. I just, again, if we could take someone who was going to be at the McCormick Place, and they're going to generate more revenue at another site, and because we are trying to maximize the revenue that we're doing, that's just my thought process, that another way we could have taken another way to get to where we are currently. I'll let you ask that, and then I got one more follow up if I can, Chair.
Yeah, and then I just to add to the comments I just made, Alderman Scott, I think one thing you mentioned is very important, which is that every operator has its own approach towards what it thinks will generate revenues, and each operator also has a different customer base, has different ways of maximizing their own revenues within their own particular casinos. So, even if we do have consultants that are on board that help to inform us as it relates to projections, those consultants aren't putting down $300 to $400 million of equity on the line to make sure that that project is a success. So ultimately, it is really about the confluence, and it's a very complicated project. It's the confluence of the operator, of the location, of the way that they think that they can maximize revenues, what amenities they're looking to add. And each of these various sites have different amenities. But that all of that into one package really becomes the proposal that we evaluate, and it'll change, really based on a whole number of different factors. I don't think there was really a way for us to be able to say that if we had picked one site versus another, that it would have, really resulted in the maximum revenues to the city.
And just to jump in there as well, Alderman, I think the curveball here was certainly COVID and what it's done to the real estate market. And considering that this is such a large project that has to get financed, that was also a variable that entered to the benefit of working across multiple sites and seeing what the bidders, knowing what they can actually get financed and can work from a real estate perspective. Having the city kind of lead that process and pick one site without hearing from the private market, given what's going on in the private market, would be another challenge as to why we had the process we did.
Well, I would argue that the pushback that you're going to get from the elected officials or community around not having that site identified beforehand is going to be a big barrier that you're going to have to figure out as well. I don't want to argue over semantics. I understand what you're saying. I just wondered why we didn't do it another way.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Alderman Scott, I forgot to mention something earlier as well, and this is actually very important. The other reason why it is that we also didn't select the site is that if the city did ultimately pick a particular site in advance before site acquisition had occurred, we would have we would have likely have impacted the cost to the city of having to acquire that land. And that's actually an experience that occurred in a number of other large cities who have worked towards putting a casino in place. When they selected that location in advance, it significantly caused for skyrocketing of real estate values, which made it very difficult to actually get the casino done.
I got it. Second question, really quickly. I know that we were talking about.
Michael?
Yes.
Given the length and what we're doing, so let's get a quick question.
Real quick.
But after this, I'm gonna have to go to round twos because we have so many of our people that want to ask questions, and we can stay on, but I want to make sure that we don't lose any of our committee members or non-committees. Thanks. Michael.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Last question, temporary casino. It may have been up timeline and where are we thinking? If you could answer that really quickly, and then I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll start, and then I'm going to defer to Samir on some of the additional details here. So the statute requires that when the casino operator goes to apply for a license, that it do so with a temporary casino and a permanent casino site, that has been agreed upon with the host city. And so it's a contemporaneous process here for us. And Samir, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
Yeah, so each of the finalists have proposed, sites of their choice and a willingness to work with the city if another site is more viable. Right now, the opening time frame is anywhere from Q1, Q2 of 2023, in some cases to 2024, just depending on the nature of the site and execution. But we know certainly getting that up and running, creating jobs and revenue is very important as a part of this process.
Okay. Again, I'm going to ask, we probably have to go to round two. I want to get through the first committee members and also the alder persons that are surrounding one of the three sites. So I'm going to do a little bit of preference after this, after we hear from Alderwoman Hairston. Leslie?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I was really interested in hearing what my colleagues have to say about that. And so since my time is short, I disagree with the fact that we should not have chosen a location first. And I just talk about the growth of the communities, the jobs that can create it. Most times they're in areas that don't have anything. And I just use as an example is the Horseshoe Casino in Indiana, where lots of people from the city of Chicago travel several times a day. And we've made that state a very wealthy state. And so I'm not going to argue with you about that, but I just want to agree with Alderman Scott. I heard somebody during the testimony say that there are no agreements and they've signed no agreements with any of the unions for jobs. Is that correct?
At this point, my understanding is there have not been agreements signed.
Are any of the three in negotiations with any of the unions?
I don't have information on that. What I will say though about the union agreements is that we did ask all.
Well, no, I'm asking the question. And the question that I want to know from them is, are they in discussions with any of the unions? And which ones are and which ones are not? That's very important if this is going to have a snowball's chance to go anywhere.
So I don't know where the bidders are in their negotiations.
Is there someone from one of the teams that you all can ask or get on with? This will probably be a very lengthy hearing. So yeah, you would have time to call them and find that status, because I would like to know with that.
Alderman Hairston, if I could answer your question. The city did ask all of the bidders to enter into agreements, both for construction.
Jenny, we're not going to talk through my time here. I know what my question was, and I want to know who's in discussion and who's not. That is my question, not the question that you want to answer. I would also like a list for all of the job titles that will be with each of these different companies, and a list of the professional services, not just the contracting, not just the supply, but who are the lawyers, who are the engineers. I want those professional services. And then I would also like to know, because you mentioned about their customer base, the demographics that they use. I would like to know for each of them what those customer base demographics are. And then my last comment is that we need to have a plan for safety in this city. Because the way things look this weekend, we're not going to be an attractive place. So those are my questions, and I will be around the whole time to wait for the answers. Thank you, Chair.
I want to mention is, speaking of who else is on the call besides Jenny and Samir, from the Department of Planning, we have Patrick Murphy, we have Noah Sopranik, Chip Hastings, and Cindy Rubeck, all works on obviously our plan developments of this magnitude. From CDOT, we have Bill Higgins. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions about traffic and law. We have Radatu, and then you all should have gotten a copy of the Union Gaming Report, which was an independent report judging the merits of all the proposals. And if anyone needs any of that information, please text me, or we'll get that to you as soon as possible. But it's all, according to my staff, this has all been sent out Friday of last week. The activation report. Okay, it's all online in the Chicago Casino Report, which I think Jenny Bennett also referred to. So again, I'm going to go a little bit out of order just because I want to hear from some of the most impacted alderpersons of the three final proposals. And I'll start with
point of information, Chair, if you don't mind.
Yes, David.
I just want to be clear to your comment you just made. You said it was sent out last week, but then you said it's online. So was it sent out, or was it online, or both?
Both. All right. Nicole, answer the question for all.
It was sent out to chair members, and then that one was sent out. The casino report was actually sent out in March. Recently sent out were the 3 traffic reports and the deck from the aldermanic briefings, as well as all the correspondence we received from anyone. That was sent out Friday. The casino report is online on that website, the casino website.
David, do you have any other questions?
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. All right, I'm gonna skip a little bit out of order because we got some impacted alderpersons that I want to make sure I hear from them. As Alderman Hairston said, we want to hear a lot from the ones most affected. So I'll start in the order that they raised their hand with Brian Hopkins. Brian. Alderman Hopkins.
You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to have to go to my desktop Can you go to the next alderman and then come back to me? Give me a few minutes to get off the mobile device.
I will. Okay, just
Thank you.
Text me whenever. Okay. Alderman Dowell, are you available to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on my mobile device, but I will do the best that I can here. First, I want to say that these casino proposals have generated some of the most, some of the largest responses I have had from my constituents on a project. None of them, all of these proposals have generated a lot of emails, I dare say hundreds of emails, even written letters, in addition to phone calls, people stopping me in places within the ward to discuss these proposals. I would say the one that has developed or has garnered the most attention has been the One Central proposal. And I want to reflect the concerns that my constituents have raised with this particular proposal. I think the first thing relates to the point that Jenny Bennett made about the proximity of this development, not only to McCormick Place, but also to a family-oriented community like the Prairie District neighborhood area, where the idea of placing a casino at this location is not one that's favored by many, hardly any. And I guess some of the questions that have come up is, how do you propose to separate the casino development from the broader One Central proposal? Would the decking for both of these projects be built at the same time? How would you handle the zoning changes needed to institute a planned development? Would it be two separate PDs? I'm just going to list the things that have been coming to me. Please further explain the financing proposal for this project. How would you finance the extensive infrastructure needs associated with building the casino? How would you insulate the existing residential neighborhood from a new casino to prevent a significant increase in foot traffic, crime, litter, etc.? How does this project affect traffic on Lakeshore Drive? To only utilize the 18th Street underpass for ingress and egress puts a lot of pressure not only on Lakeshore Drive, but also on the proposed development. How would
Pat, could you turn your video on, please? I know your internet connection might be unstable, but there you go.
My video is on, but I need to be at a desktop then, because I can't refer to
continue on. You're obviously
I can't refer to my written stuff and
okay. No problem, Pat. Just keep going.
Okay. How would this particular project conform to the height density sightline requirements for the site? People are really concerned about signage and neon lights and and how that operates on the site. How are you proposing to ensure neighborhood public safety? Parking is a huge concern now for the area. As you know, we are already inundated with cars and traffic when we have events at Soldier Field. How do you propose to prevent casino guests from parking in the established surrounding neighborhood? And what are your proposed methods for limiting noise and casino events and typical daily operation? I've also received a lot of response from emails from some of my constituents, especially in Dearborn Park 2, regarding the 78 proposal. And their questions relate to, how would this project coincide with the proposed Discovery Partners Institute already announced on the site? How do you ensure that the casino guests do not walk, drive through the existing residential neighborhood, especially Dearborn Park 2, which is directly across the street on Clark. How will 15th Street be designed so that residents are not impacted by car traffic leaving the casino? How would the casino affect the previous plans for the 78, including the proposed commercial area along Clark Street? The proposed red line stop for the 78, is that sufficient to handle the casino traffic? What is your plan for CTA station security specifically, since this was a carefully negotiated location for the station that was done with the community? Again, people are wanting to detail on the public safety and traffic plans. There are some concerns about how would this project affect the Riverwalk and potential extension south. Finally, well, not finally, the original plan also called for a significant number of residential units. How would the casino impact the unit count moving forward? And what are your proposed methods for limiting noise, light, neon lights, etc., from casino events and typical daily operations? I know those are a number of questions, Chairman Tunney, but you know, as I stated, the devil is always in the detail. So these are some concerns that my neighborhood residents have. In any case, there is very little support for the One Central development proposal casino, or Hard Rock Casino, I should say. Limited support for the 78, and I've heard nothing on the third proposal.
Thank you, Pat. Obviously, you asked a lot of questions. We've got them written down, and we will try to get as many of those back to you. I'm sure there'll be a number of similar questions from the other committee members. And thank you for your due diligence on this. As far as whether Samir or Jenny or the Department of Planning, two of these developments have been in previously approved plan developments. So on the high level, if the casino was in, and obviously One Central has not been in a plan development, but just from a holistic nature, will someone answer the questions about the previously approved plan developments and how the casino would impact those plan developments?
Yes, Chairman. So let me start, and then I think Noah and the Department of Planning and Development can talk in more detail about the plan developments. But I think Alderman Dow mentioned some questions regarding both the One Central site and the 78 site. I think what was common in those themes are concerns related to safety, transportation, and a number of other issues that were raised to Alderman Dow from her community. So at a high level, you know, what these casino developments will go through the plan development process or an amendment process. And so as part of the operating plan of anything that happens in a plan development, a lot of those issues that were raised will be addressed and will go through another process that will be in addition to the special committee and the city council approval for the purposes of the Illinois Gaming Board. We will have our own city processes in the plan development for those items. As you can all imagine, other entertainment venues have similar concerns in terms of their impacting communities. And so we have a set process via PDs and other forms of licensing to really address that. Some specific questions that were raised, I'll start first on the One Central site in terms of the separation between the full One Central development as it was articulated several years ago versus the Hard Rock Casino site. When you see the evaluation report, the Hard Rock site is a portion that was originally conceived in the One Central site, so it is standalone. It is not contingent on the rest of the One Central development happening. And so it's on the southern part of the original One Central site.
Samir,
yes.
Samir, that's not true from my constituents' perspective, because both sites require the construction of the civic build or the deck. Is that not correct? So
there is some, you're exactly right in that there will be some amount of decking needed since the development parcel is really air rights over the Metro tracks. However, for the Hard Rock site as a standalone, there would be a deck on that portion of the site. And it doesn't necessarily entail the entirety of the civic build as originally conceived in that one central development. So the scenario in the Hard Rock development is that a portion of the site will be decked kind of south of where that bridge is over the Metro tracks to Soldier Field. And that would be the primary parcel for development for a casino, specifically independent of the one central development.
Oh, Samir, we could debate all day on Alderman Dowell's questions, which are very appropriate and valid. So what I was more asking about that the overarching PD process with both the Bally's and the 78, they obviously have been approved for multi-dimensional, multi-density projects. This casino would take up a certain portion. I think it was like 10 to 15% at 78, but even a larger portion at Bally's. So how would they re-engineer, so to speak, if the casino was one of the two selected? Obviously, One Central has a whole myriad of complex issues, but I think 78 and the Bally's ones may be a little bit more straightforward.
Sure. So Noah, do you want to take part of this first?
Sure. Hello, Chairman. It's Noah. So I'll answer these in general terms, and then we can get as specific as we need to. But we'll start north, going south. So on the Bally's proposal, you're right. There's an existing plan development in place. The existing plan development has a level of height and density that would allow the casino to go in with an amendment as one small part of the development. Other areas could then still receive certain portions of density depending on the developer's sort of proposals to the city. Similar at the 78, the casino would be seeking one portion of the plan development, so one sub area, and a majority, if not all, of what's been negotiated through that PD, including the RDA, would stay in place, and all of those other improvements would remain. I think Alderman Dow has asked once before, but the rail station would also remain as part of those improvements in the PD. And then the most complicated of the three is the Hard Rock one, because that's currently comprised of essentially 3 plan developments, and all 3 of those plan developments would need to be amended, and then a new plan development would need to be created from the land that gets removed from the other 3 plan developments.
Right. From the 78, though, the casino was going to take about, on the land acreage, was about maybe 10 to 15%, was it not?
Give or take. Yep.
And then the Bally's was a little bit higher than that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they have more land area, less building area, but yes, because they have a large Riverwalk Park as part of that.
All right, I'm going to move back to Alderman Hopkins. Brian, you ready?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your patience. I had the same issue as Alderman Dahl. I couldn't get the video active on the mobile device, but here I am. Okay, so my question is for Ms. Bennett. Just looking at the enabling legislation that created this committee, it seems pretty clear that our jurisdiction is the evaluation of this process and ultimately the approval of the process. It says specifically, the special committee will have jurisdiction over all matters related to the establishment of a casino, including budgeting and financing, along with many other things on that list. So my question is specifically the $300,000 application fee that was imposed. I found out about that from the media. I don't believe it was presented to the city council in any manner whatsoever. So my first question, Ms. Bennett, is what statutory authority was relied upon to establish this fee, and how did we establish a fund by which to collect the fee and ultimately disperse it? That seems to me to be part of this committee, or certainly the city council's responsibility Yet we had no involvement in that. And then the second question would be, of course, whatever criteria was used to establish the fee, how was one of the applicants given a waiver for the fee under which set of criteria was relied upon to apply this fee in a manner that on its face seems rather unfair and inconsistent?
So, well, hold on, Brian. Let me thank you for the question. Again, we're going to try to get through every of the committee members on a short version for round one, and then we'll go back to round two. So I want to make sure that your first round is very pointed with not only that question, but specific possibly to the site that's more impacted by you and your community. So Jenny, let's talk about the license fee and the cost of the gaming study and such. Okay.
Sure. I will start with the second question first, which is that the RFP, which we did share with the City Council early on in this process, was the place where it is that we disclose the fee for the application. And in that RFP, we noted that it was an application fee per applicant. And that the applicants that responded, were different legal entities for a number of the proposals. So that ultimately, when we go through the process of evaluating the proposals, we have to look at financial wherewithal. We have to look at their existing financial construct. We have to look at the other operations within the region. That all of that, work was, ultimately done by the legal entity making the application. And I'm actually going to defer to TAF to provide some more specifics around, the construct here. I believe Kim Kopp from TAF is on, who can go into that in further detail.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Hi, I'm Kim Kopp. I'm from TAF, Stettinius and Hollister, outside counsel. The fee that was assessed. It's not unusual to do this. We've done this for other jurisdictions that we've run casino RFP processes for. The intent of the fee is to defer costs for consultants, whether that be the traffic consultants, the feasibility consultants, the finance consultants, and all the time that's been spent to defer some of the costs for the city. In this RFP process, it was assessed per applicant, as Jenny has properly defined, and we defined applicant as the group or the folks, the entity, for lack of a better term, that would be applying for the owner's license before the Illinois Gaming Board. So in this case, what happened is Bally's, as we know, is Bally's Corporation was an applicant. They proposed 2 sites, but were 1 applicant. The others we had, I know everybody's going to say, I think we've heard Rivers, or they're very similar names, Rivers McCormick and Rivers 78. That was really just what that is Rush Street Gaming, which also operates the Rivers Casino and Des Plaines, is a common investor in both of those entities and is also a common manager of the casino in both of those entities. However, the actual entities applying were very different. They were different legal constructs. They were different, quote unquote, applicants, as we defined in the RFP. And that's why, so it wasn't a waiver of a fee. We didn't view anything as a waiver. Rather, we assessed it on applicants and there was different ownership in the Rivers groups, different developers and managers in the Rivers group. And so we defined it as it was in the RFP, what an applicant was, and assessed the fee pursuant to the terms set forth in the RFP.
And is there any relevant section within city code that you would rely on to establish this fee? We have section 4.5 where we establish all sorts of licensing application fees that were enacted by ordinance of the city council. So is there any other section that would create the authority for the executive branch, in this case, to impose this very substantial $300,000 fee?
I don't. I would have to go look at the city code to see where we've assessed this fee.
So, okay. Kim, just for the record, for the benefit of the committee, identify yourself and, as what you said, outside legal counsel assisting our law department. Would you do that for the record, please?
Sure. My name is Kim. The last name is Kopp. I'm from TAF, Stettinius and Hollister. We serve as outside gaming counsel for the city of Chicago.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not questioning the wisdom of this fee or even its use in defraying the very substantial costs of this process. All that makes sense to me. I'm simply questioning the authority upon which it was established. And I think it's relevant going forward because it raises, jurisdictional questions about what this committee is supposed to do. Are we ultimately going to be the ones to approve this, one of the three, or, are we going to wait for the mayor to approve it and then we get to weigh in? These are questions that haven't really been answered fully. And we're sort of, flying the airplane as we build it here. So I just think it's important that we get an answer to this. And I don't need it right now, but council, if you could look at city code and get back to us as to what is the relevant section that allowed what appeared to be a unilateral act to establish a $300,000 fee.
We got it. We got it. Okay, Brian, one more question.
Yes, and then to your point, Mr. Chairman, we should be talking more specifically about the sites in our area. The specific question I have about the Bally's proposal is I was trying to find examples of recent construction projects that this investment group has enacted. And I was unable to find any. I know we know the Bally's name, it's a familiar name, and they have existing casinos, but this investment group bought that name, relatively recently, acquired Bally's and the assets. So I'm unclear what their level of experience is when it comes to building and developing very large, substantial projects. It seems to me that they have none.
Good question.
So,
Brian, let me ask Samir or anyone on the staff you'd like to respond to the question from Alderman Hopkins.
Thank you, Alderman Hopkins. We'll make sure to follow up with that information. I think some of these questions that are bidder specific, we'll make sure that there's written answers to you on. In particular, any of these applicants are going to have a very robust development team to get through the city entitlement and other processes that you know very well. And it certainly as part of that evaluation, we'll collectively have to have that confidence that they have the right team in place and the ability to get this financed. So that is a key part of this equation. And I know for all these bidder specific experience questions, as a part of the procurement, we'll make sure that we have answers for you.
Thank you.
Next, let's see. We have. Let me see. Let me go to. Well, I know where Alderman Cicho Lopez is on, and he has his hand up, and then I'll go to Walter Burnett. Alderman Cicho Lopez, non-committee member. Okay, and Alderman, you know how I feel about your role and your importance for your community. So I want to make sure that you get plenty of airtime today.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, and I appreciate that. And also, I know Alderwoman Dowell definitely had several questions. I'm going to try not to repeat myself or some of the questions already happened. This is in terms of the oversight of the PD. This is around the 78. I heard DPD talking about the oversight of the planning development. As you know, there was a committee that was set up with the mayor's office to review this PD. So first, and I want to make sure that this is a question that comes directly from the Community Advisory Council that oversights the PD on the 78. So my first question is, what is the role of this committee, the Community Advisory Council, in terms of reviewing of the PD? I understanding that there has to be this discussion around the gaming that is not allowed under current PD. And the following up that question is, if depending what the role is, will this Community Advisory Council can also be brought up to this body as a subject matter expert, because they've been working on this PD for at least 2 years. So I want to make sure that the feedback is, I know that they wrote a letter to Chairman Tunney. So I want to make sure that those questions are asked and also directly from them, right? So make sure that their voice is also considered. So that is my first kind of one-two punch question.
Yeah, Alderman Cicho Lopez, thank you for that question. And as you know, many of the rules surrounding large plan developments, in terms of changing those to include more community feedback, was an early priority for Mayor Lightfoot. And so community advisory councils were created at Lincoln Yards. They were created at the 78. And as Alderwoman King knows, were from day one a central part of the Bronzeville Lakefront development on the former Michael Reese site. You'll see in the RFP a lot of discussion about the importance of engagement. We would anticipate that a similar community advisory council, if one doesn't exist, would also be created wherever the casino is selected. Specifically to your question about the 78 Community Advisory Council, first, I have to say, thank you to the tremendous leadership of the two chairs, Armando and Debbie. They've spent a tremendous amount of time engaged with the city. What was also important with the procurement process is to be very even-handed with all of the sites, and not all of the sites had well-organized community councils. And so we certainly recognize the frustration when you have to be very even-handed when there's a well-organized community group that is very much at the table. The city departments, actually, they're on the call today, along with myself and Jenny, will be meeting with the 78 Advisory Council to answer all of their questions. We've been trying to do that for a little bit, but spring break got in the way. So I believe we'll be sitting down with them on Friday. And their engagement and feedback is very important. And that's why we're going to make sure that we have personal time with them on this topic. In terms of how that will shape future developments, as I mentioned, they provide valuable input to all large developments. So we anticipate wherever this casino ends up, that a CAC will be in place and provide valuable feedback to shaping the course of that development and potentially what's in the planned development agreement.
Alderman Cicho Lopez, do you have one more question, sir?
Yes. So the next one will be, and thank you, and again, Chairman Tony, look forward to making sure that these community advisory councils continue to give us information, again, when they've been working, as Samir mentioned, for quite some time with us. The other one has to do with the recent evaluation that was given to all of us, that was posted. In terms of the cost-benefit analysis, and I think that this is, and again, I'm going to be mindful, I want to be very specific about the areas that I represent, but in terms of cost-benefit analysis, my concern, again, I know for a fact, and I think it's been said multiple times, about the importance of honoring on pensions, especially for the police department as well as the fire department. That doesn't get lost in us. The question is in line of the cost-benefit analysis for each side. I'm particularly concerned about the effects and costs associated with gambling addiction, the costs associated with taking businesses away rather than for communities like Chinatown that are huge economic engines for the city of Chicago. So as we are perhaps bringing revenue on one end, we're taking away from another end. And I want to make sure that this is addressed here in a cost-benefit analysis to communities like Chinatown and the South Loop, that this is not, and again, I would like to say, similar to what happened with the parking meter, when we addressed the issue of revenue, but in the long run, that's ended up being a bigger cost than benefit. So in terms of the cost-benefit analysis, has that been added to this evaluation for each project?
Good question. Good question, Alderman Cicho Lopez. And obviously, this came up quite a bit in our community meetings about not only safety, security, addiction, and stuff. So, Jenny, you want to talk? I don't mean to say it financially, but as he mentioned, the cost benefit of this more, I would say, more a different approach to valuation.
Sure. So what we have taken a cost benefit analysis into account here, and importantly have asked for all of the bidders to commit to community benefits to help support the local community, but also broader impacts in the community as a result of the casino. We've also taken a look at research out there related to what those impacts may be. And, importantly, I can speak also to, some of what I think is, rumor or just assumptions around what the social impacts might be for a casino, as well as what the research has shown. In total, our approach to this is to negotiate a sum of dollars, which the bidder will provide to help support community benefits. And we've also taken a look at a number of other large developments in the city of Chicago and the community benefits that were negotiated there as comparables for what might be, an opportunity here as well. We've also taken a look at the community benefits provided to other casinos in other parts of the country. And as a part of that, would negotiate a certain amount of community benefits that would come back to not just the local community, but also citywide. We're going to look to this committee for your feedback on how it is that we structure the governance of those dollars, as well as how it is that those dollars are applied towards various community benefits. And look forward to some of your thoughts and considerations there. But mostly to say that we have definitely incorporated a number of various negotiated items to help support those community benefits. For example, by way of gambling addiction, we've asked for all the bidders to consider on-site gambling addiction support services, the dollars that I mentioned, workforce development, training, and a host of other various considerations.
Cicho, stay on the call for round two. I just want to at least get everyone. We've got a lot of hands up still, but I do want to talk to those other persons mostly affected geographic wise. So I'm going to move to Alderman Walter Burnett. Walter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And I appreciate all of the questions from everyone else. I just got to clear things up a little bit. I know this is good entertainment and good news for the media right now. And it's good to have controversy with us and the mayor and everyone else. I understand those things. And I think in my, as I be around longer and longer, I just try to be more candid with people. One of the things that I did express to one of the media outlets was that, who really want to deal with this right now at this time? It's close to election time. Nobody really want to deal with it. But I do understand it's a necessary evil. We do have to deal with our pension obligations. We do have an obligation. We have a fiscal responsibility for the city of Chicago, and not just for the residents that live in these immediate areas, but we have, some of us have larger wards that covers more than just one community. And also we have the whole city of Chicago. Me, myself, as you know, Mr. Chairman, I've done hundreds of zoning changes, and in each one of them, nobody's ever wholly satisfied. And we deal with those issues, and they end up, and most of the time, they end up making a lot of money off of their property after those developments are built. Some of the main people who go against them. So I understand the fiscal challenges with this, and I wanted to ask Jenny if you can give us a little more. Can you tell us exactly when is it due? When do we have to have this money to deal with the fiscal challenges for the police and fire pension fund?
So, as you know, we have been challenged with the police and fire pension fund, all of our pension fund costs over the last several years. We did climb a very large ramp for police and fire in 2020, and then we just climbed a very large ramp for union laborers in 2022. All of that to say that it's already a significant burden on our financials, and so much so that we are putting roundly about $320 million of our $29 million of our corporate fund monies, into covering our pension payments. So the burden is here. We are working very hard to get to structural balance within this next budget cycle, which then starts to get us on a stable pathway as it relates to our finances, and allowed us to, start to get, back to better credit ratings and improve pension funding situation. As it relates to when exactly we need the dollars, we noted this in the evaluation report, but that, upfront budgetary relief is of significant importance, in particular because it will take time for the casino to be up and running in a full steady state. Currently, we're expecting for the temporary casino, to be up and running sometime between 2023 and 2024, and then the permanent casino to be up and running between 25 and 26. And given that time frame, that upfront budgetary relief is what we use to help, in essence, build that bridge towards when we get to the steady state of 200 million or so revenues a year to the city. And so that's, ultimately the lens that we've applied towards the upfront payment.
So if this doesn't happen, if we were to either postpone this or don't do this, what type of burden would that be on the city? And then what is our other alternatives to deal with the fiscal challenges that we have?
So what would happen is it would be very difficult for the city to get to a structural balance. We're back into, having to use one-time measures, which the city has moved away from, and which has caused for us to be able to create some relatively stable ratings in the midst of a pandemic. And as a result of that, we would need to start to make choices fairly soon in the upcoming budget year, likely, in order to get to that, stable state. And as I noted in my earlier comments, the only really viable alternative source for the city of this magnitude would have to be property taxes. It's the primary source of revenues that has funded our pension contributions. As I mentioned in my remarks, it's about 1.4 billion out of the $2.3 billion pension contribution that we pay every year, and is the only revenue source that we have available that could really cover that shortfall.
Okay. Well, I know I don't want to be involved with increasing anyone's property tax. So hopefully we don't have to do that. So from what I understand, there was some term papers given from these casinos where some of them had opportunities to do other things. Has any of these bids changed drastically since that time? And is it possible for us to know what happened with that?
So the city has continued to negotiate the various proposals since the release of the evaluation report. We can't comment on where those terms are for really any of the bids at this point, in large part because we are in the midst of a procurement process and are continuing to negotiate those agreements, and they continue to get confirmed. But ultimately, we are working to negotiate a better proposal from what we had released in the evaluation report.
Okay, and then I know Noah, this is a large development. And I did a big plan development over here on the Tribune site. And you all recall, just like me, we had several meetings in reference to it. I don't recall half of those people that's concerned about this casino coming to any of those meetings and being concerned about that development. Can you tell me, which is sort of ironic to me, of course, most of them don't live in my ward, but can you tell me what's the difference in the impact on traffic with what's being proposed on that site and with traffic and density, and also what's being and what the casino is going to do? And then I just want to let everybody know, for me, dealing with traffic and density and all that is a little different because I live right by the United Center, man. I drive through traffic all day, every day, and deal with people all the time. But I'm still living, and my property values are still going up and all those good things. But Noah, can you tell me what's the difference?
Walter, yeah, well, Noah, we have Noah, and I think Bill Higgins is from CDOT. Yep. So will one of the two answer, Alderman Burnett, and then we'll move on.
Chairman, Alderman, it's Noah. I'll start, and then I'll give it to Bill Higgins to do the back half for the CDOT, the traffic control portion. But Alderman, yes, so as you know, the PD as approved today sits with a density of about 7.6 FAR. So, excuse me, the casino will take a portion of the site. And so we expect to see a reduction of density, but we still anticipate various sub-areas to be then improved with office or dwelling units as contemplated in the original PD. Once we get a final scope of work from the team, if selected, they'll choose to move forward and we amend the PD accordingly. We'll have a new level of density to work with, but conceivably it should go down from what was originally approved. And then I think Bill Higgins and his team have some traffic info they'd like to discuss.
So you're saying the current density of the PD that we voted on, that we had several community meetings on, that we didn't have a lot of opposition for, has more density and more traffic than the actual proposed casino.
That is correct.
All right.
Let me ask Bill Higgins specifically on the traffic, okay, to answer Alderman Burnett's question.
Mr. Chairman, point of information.
Right. While we wait for Bill Higgins, Alderman Dowell.
I'd like for Mr. Higgins to answer my traffic questions regarding the 78 and the Hard Rock proposals.
Okay. All right. Let's see what he can do off the tip of his tongue. Otherwise, we will get back to all the affected aldermen on the traffic.
Can you repeat the question specifically about traffic that you want me to address, other than what Noah had said about the process?
Well, in regard, so in all the three proposals, there was obviously questions about traffic patterns, days of the week, times, potentially connecting streets, and I think in case of Alderman Burnett, he said that we approved a very large development with an FAR of 7 point something with the appropriate traffic study that was part of the previously approved PD. If we add the casino in a certain portion of that, I think the question is, how would the traffic plan be adjusted based on the use of a casino versus the residential office development that was previously approved? Then we'll go to 78, and I think it's much more complex with one central.
Understood. Yes, in the case of the Chicago and Halsted PD, that had quite a bit more FAR, as you note. It was all business and office space and residential. Our traffic consultant that's reviewing all the traffic studies that are presented by the casinos, as well as the comparing them to the original traffic studies that were approved as part of the PDs, is making certain assumptions about casinos that's based on comparable casinos in other cities, and especially focused on urban areas. But in general, we see traffic patterns for casinos being different than those of businesses and residential. So it's adjusting the numbers based on those figures.
Bill, would you like me to address?
Oh yeah, hey, and there's Peter Lemon from our traffic consultant. I'll let you elaborate.
Sure.
Okay. So is it Peter? Identify yourself and your role in this.
Sure. So good afternoon. My name is Peter Lemon with Kimley Horn. We are serving as a consultant to the city in review of the applications, particularly relative to transportation related elements of the plans. So just picking up on where Bill left off on the Bally's Tribune site. So Alderman Burnett, we did look at what was included in the plan development that was approved for the River District PD. And its traffic, and as you might recall, it was a mix of residential and a pretty significant amount of office. As a comparison, we looked at the replacing the component that would be the casino and hotel and entertainment piece, as well as the balance of the site. And so Bally's has had discussions with multiple other developers to look at what would a development plan be for the balance of the site. And so we looked at those, and they're all generally similar. You can imagine they're mostly mixed use, but primarily residential with a little bit of retail and hotel kinds of things. But the balance of that, when you look at a comparison of what was approved as part of the River District plan versus what is part of the Bally's plan, the Bally's plan would generate less traffic during the morning, relatively similar in the evening, and relatively similar during the later evenings, which casinos have a different traffic profile than say an office use would. It's generally much more oriented around Friday and Saturday evenings, say around 8 to 11 p.m. And so I think the typical peak hours that we're looking at for the Tribune site are a little bit less. Going back, I think the request was to kind of go through each of the three different sites. Looking at the 78, we did a similar comparison. If they were to swap out, say, the northern portion where the casino is proposed
with what they had approved as part of the 78. It's a little less difference because it's a little different in terms of the uses that would be swapped out. But it is generally consistent with what the traffic volumes that were projected associated with the 78 were. And then in terms of One Central and the Hard Rock casino proposal, it is a little bit different because there's no existing plan development to compare it to. So the applicant for that Hard Rock has put together some traffic projections based on industry kind of standard data, which is a little bit different than what each of the others did. The others, the 78, for example, looked at, other casino, the Rivers Casino, and made adjustments relative to the location, similar with Bally's. I think there was one other question that was about 15th. I don't know if I should try to address that now, or if you want to hold off.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on, because
and I'm not done.
We've got a lot of questions. Yeah, we got a lot of questions. I do want to. My committee person Nicole said the traffic studies for each of the three have been sent to all the committee members. We will be sending them upon request, but I think Alderman Cicho Lopez is going to want to see his impact. So there's going to be a lot more questions about that, but obviously there is a community concern on all three locations in regards to the traffic plan. I'm just going to for Alderman Dow, just quickly talk about just the 15th, because I believe historically that the 78 probably had the more transit-rich opportunities of the three sites. But let's talk specifically about the Dearborn issue.
So as part of that plan, before, as part of the original, 78 PD, the one that's there now, and the casino plan, 15th Street would extend across from the Wells Wentworth connection over to Clark Street. And as I understand the concern is for residents in Dearborn Park concerned about, for example, people leaving the casino and going across Clark Street, trying to go through the neighborhood as a means of exiting, or something in that regard, maybe because they're familiar or unfamiliar with the area. And so, that is a detail with the intersection that I think we would, if this, to work through. I think there are intersection configurations where you could force people exiting, even if it's at a signal, to turn either north or south on Clark Street and physically disallow people to continue straight across the intersection and go into the neighborhood. That's a detail that hasn't really been defined yet, but I'm sure we could work some sort of intersection design that addresses that concern.
All right, Peter, you'll stay on, I know, but Alderman Burnett had his second and final question for round one.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Peter and Higgins. So my other thing is, I'm very concerned about the union deal. From what I understand, these casinos, when they gave their presentation, they proposed that the salaries were going to be a certain amount and all of those things. And we want to make sure those things stay in place. So we need to make sure that the unions are taken care of. Two, the unions the other thing is, as far as that fee goes, how much was the fee that they're accusing Bally's of getting a pass on?
Each application, $300,000. Now I know Jenny Bennett spoke specifically.
So to me, $300,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to what's being proposed here. Why don't they just give up the $300,000 and call it a day and keep moving? You know what I'm saying? That's just my thought. Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Alderman Riley, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a whole bunch of questions, so I'll also have to go to round two. But to follow up on where Chairman Burnett finished, with regard to organized labor, this is a quick yes or no question for the administration. Are project labor agreements a requirement for each of these?
Yes, they are.
And what about card check neutrality agreements with the hotel operators?
They were not a requirement. So just to be clear, the PLA was a requirement under state statute. The peace agreement was not a requirement under state statute, but the city's RFP on page 31 of the RFP asked for the bidders to commit to have contracts with organized labor during construction and operations of the casino facilities with appropriate exemptions to meet representative subcontracting goals and community hiring goals.
Okay, well, that language seems more focused on the construction piece, less so on the operations piece.
No, I'm sorry,
And-
Alderman Riley, it says construction and operations in the
Oh, great. Then it should be no problem to have a requirement for a card check neutrality agreement. I think that's should be a basic expectation if really we're going through all these contortions to get more gambling revenue. Let's make sure it's good for the workers too.
Next question.
I'd like to just make I've got a question. I'll stick to questions in this round and not so much statements. So the report makes it pretty clear that there are some potential challenges with a hedge fund controlled company. I'm talking about Bally's ability to secure financing as it's attempting to take Bally's from public to private status. In comparison to the other shortlisted bids, the Bally's financing information is pretty vague and includes the caveat that its commitment letters, quote, do not take into account the proposal going private transaction, end quote, as well as the statement that taking Bally's private will create a, quote, more leveraged company. So unlike
Samir, do
the
you
other
want to answer
bidders,
that, Samir?
that's my first question.
Yeah, and actually, I'll punt this to Jenny.
I'll answer that. So we noted within the evaluation report the review of all the bids, as well as concerns that we had with all the bids. And if you take a look at some of the other bids, there are also comments there about the highly competent letters that were received from really all of them. As it relates to your specific question about the Bally's bid, we did note that the highly competent letter that we received did not cover for a potential leveraged buyout, which is a proposal that's on the table as it relates to Bally's. And so as a part of those ongoing discussions, it is a point that we have been discussing to confirm, what the status of that's going to be and how the city can get assurances that their financial wherewithal to fund the project will be there for us.
Okay. And so the average population in the 13 cities where Bally's is currently operating is about 110,000. And based on their current casino property portfolio, it doesn't appear that Bally's has a whole lot of experience operating in a dense urban environment. What confidence do we have that they're going to be able to properly manage a $1.7 billion development in the third largest city in America?
Well, sorry, Chairman. I don't want to.
Oh, no, Jenny, go right ahead.
Okay. So the first thing I would say is that no one really has experience operating a casino of this magnitude within the U.S., at least as it relates to the ones that are finalists in this bid. The question I think that you asked, which is something that we are evaluating, is what is your experience in operating, urban or large casinos? And it's something that we are considering as it relates to all of the various bidders. So ultimately, the city of Chicago is the third largest city in the country. LA and New York don't really have the same kind of casino at this point, the same kind of casino. So this will be one of the largest casino in the country. And we are going to evaluate all of them for their ability to operate a casino, but ultimately not many in our finalist pool have operated casinos as large in a city as large as Chicago.
So in a way, we're gambling on that prospect too, bad pun, knowing that these folks typically operate in much smaller markets.
Yeah, they all have fairly deep operating experience in various markets. So I think if you ask anybody in the gaming industry, I wouldn't call them, any of our operators that are finalists, newbies to this business. So ultimately, I think that we have 3 very good proposals. But as it relates to kind of looking for somebody who has operated a casino as large as Chicago, none of them have done that.
All right, Brendan, next question.
Okay. can you explain the provision that the city has apparently accepted from Bally's that allows them to buy out minority participants after a certain period of time? I would think that we would expect all of the applicants to adhere to the same commitments on minority participation and leverage in the entity. Could you speak to that, please?
Sure. So the city is not accepting a buyout of minority participants, a forced buyout of minority participants. We are, basically asking for all of the bidders to allow the minority participants to stay in the casino project for as long as they choose. So I think that, that you're probably referring to the buyout provision within the Bally's bid, which is, something that the city would not support, because we do want to allow for folks who are minority participants to continue on in the proposal for as long as they choose to. Ultimately, I understand that the history of that came from the fact that Bally's is offering to provide lending to minority participants so they can leverage up their cash investment to a higher dollar amount and ultimately be a bigger part of the project, as well as be able to earn more on the project. And so, that lending still exists. Is a different part of their proposal that is available to minority participants if they choose to take that. But importantly, we would not accept a continued buyout, from as a mandatory buyout, for the minority participants.
Brendan, last question for round one. Mm-hmm.
Last question for round one. Okay, well, I wanted to state this very briefly, that the River North Residents Association, which has a very large chunk of population density closest to this site, is conducting a neighborhood-wide survey. And they've had thousands of respondents. And I think similar to the experience that Chairman Dowell and others that are either in or near a proposed site are having, the response has been overwhelmingly negative. In River North's example, 86% are opposed. I've done a ward-wide survey, so folks that don't even live near the site, and well over 80% are opposed. And mostly it's because of what's considered to be the potential lost economic development multiplier. By placing this casino near areas of the city that are certainly proximate to downtown, but could use a little boost to the retail corridor, seems like a great way to expand the economic pie while also achieving our revenue goals. And for a lot of folks, it just seems counterintuitive to drop a casino in an already thriving neighborhood that doesn't need much help with economic development. And many of my colleagues have alluded to that already today. Could you speak to that? Because I think, as Alderman Scott said, perhaps if the city had engaged with the alderman on potential sites and helped gear that conversation and guide it with the potential developers and operators, that might have produced less acrimony and more upfront consensus on how best to locate this casino.
So, Alderman, if your suggestion is that we place this casino in an area that doesn't have as much economic activity, we did have this conversation very early on in the casino process in 2019, and our consultants, Union Gaming, who provided a study on behalf of the state, as required under statute, that and looked at a number of sites, both downtown and not downtown. And out of that study, what it showed is that the city would generate significantly less revenue by a location that was not near the downtown area. Casino operations thrive on accessibility and traffic and activity in the neighborhood. And if we ultimately want to maximize revenues for the city, a location close to downtown is where it is that we would be able to maximize those revenues.
Sure. And I'm not arguing it shouldn't be close to downtown. I'm just suggesting putting it downtown is different than being proximate to downtown. But okay, Chairman, thank you. I'll come back in round 2.
And your studies, your opinion poll from River North has been distributed to all committee members. Okay. All right.
Point of clarification, Chairman.
That is Sophia King.
Alderman King.
Alderwoman? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just.
Yeah.
What constitutes the downtown area? You know, I asked a similar question before, and they were saying the radius was, so many miles to predict revenue. So can someone clarify that?
I know from a planning perspective, we published a report on downtown recovery about the central city, and that central city boundary. DPD can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it has almost North Avenue on the northern side of the parcel, Ashland on the western side of the parcel, all the way down to 31st or 35th Street as the broader central city, which is how the central business district is looked at just from a planning perspective.
I know from a planning perspective, but in doing this assessment, there was some assessment about what constitutes where you can make revenue. And they made some assumptions based on that, the operators. So maybe one of the consultants can answer that.
I could start in responding to that, and we do have our consultants on who can also add to the comments. The gaming revenue forecasting models ultimately, at a very simplistic, level, rely on assumptions around income and travel times in concentric circles that grow from locations close to the site and then radiating out from that site. And it alternates in terms of the level of penetration for gaming activity the further away you get from those sites.
Right. So, what's the concentric area? There was a number you guys gave out before, and it was a matter of miles. So I just want somebody to put that on the record.
Sure. And the gaming consultants can speak to that, but they go from very close with a higher percentage of penetration to very far. And again, Grant can speak to the precise level of detail around that. But there,
let's get an answer. Okay. From the gaming people, try to answer more specifically the circumference of this penetration area.
Sure. Shall I proceed, Jenny?
Yes, please.
Hey, this is Grant Govertson. I'm with Union Gaming, and we're the outside consultant that's looking at the feasibility from a gaming perspective. The model that we use specifically, as Jenny mentioned, is a gravity model. It actually looks out approximately 120 minutes drive time. That doesn't mean that somebody 120 minutes away is going to be a regular customer. But to Jenny's point, the closer in you are, the more likely you are to participate in gaming. So one way to put it is, the model extends as far as it needs to before it starts encountering other competitive gaming supply. So for example, on the south side, you're going to encounter a new casino in Homewood. You've of course got the 3 casinos in Northwest Indiana, and you've got another casino upcoming at Hawthorne Racecourse. So, those in a way you might view as, an outer bound of how far the reach of the casino would go.
Right. Okay, so Alderwoman King. Okay, let me ask,
I'm here.
Are you ready, since you're very much an impacted alderperson in regards to one of these, would you like to take your 5 minutes or so to ask your first round of questions, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Proceed then.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to belabor some of the questions and comments others made, but I do want to say that, this is too important not to get it right. I think Chairman Scott, opened up with this, and I think Alderman Riley just echoed that sentiment that, we need to really pick a great site first, and then, a great operator. And I've said that for a while, and I've heard some of the response. I quite frankly, if we have consultants, who are kind of working on our behalf, it would behoove us to really put them to work and say, based on a number of things, this would be the best site. And I think obviously revenue is important. One of my questions will be, the revenue projections that are taken into account, do they take into consideration high quality labor jobs? I know some of those things are being worked out, but I don't know how they can have those revenue projections without that. So that's one of my questions. But, I would emphasize that, we need to probably take a step back and figure out what that best location is. What location has the least impact on community, the least impact on traffic, the greatest impact on revenue. And I would say go a step forward, because we're always talking about equity, but also, the operator and the diversity of the team and the diversity of resources and where that's going to end up, I think is truly important. And so, I also, question two is, I thought I heard Samir say that the operators would be willing to go to another site. I would like, maybe I heard that wrong, but I'd like him to clarify that. And then, I'd like to hear from the consultants on whether they have looked at kind of all of these things and, have a suggestion about who would do the best job and have the most viable operator, but also the one, who's going to make us the most revenue with the least impact on traffic, community, and deleterious impacts on certain types of community. I think is important that we, haven't really discussed. So those are my three questions.
Samir, do you want to start?
Yes. So first, thank you, Alderwoman King. I think what I said in terms of the sites being open, it's in terms of the question of the temporary site. So each of the bidders has proposed a certain temporary site. The city has also encouraged them to look at other sites, potentially like a hotel downtown, in terms of trying to enhance foot traffic in some of those areas that need revitalization. So that's, I think the openness was in terms of the temporary site. But in more broadly, in terms of
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep, no problem. In terms of the question around sites, we really do feel that this process has had a tremendous amount of integrity. And, let me put it this way, in most jurisdictions, the site selection comes down to bidders. And part of the reason for that is what you end up seeing is tremendous real estate speculation when the government goes and aligns on one site. That's possible in countries that don't have as much. Let me just put it this way. This is something that happened, for example, in Singapore, where the government owns a lot of land, and so they can pick a site. But in most jurisdictions in the United States, you have bidders come in, and Taft, our outside consultant, can advise on this. They compete, especially when site control is a question. And that's why we ran the process this way. And as I mentioned earlier, the COVID impact on the real estate market further doubled down on the need to really understand what's financeable and leave it to the private market as an initial step to understand what's viable, what can be financed, and also where the bidders can secure site control, which isn't always guaranteed.
Yeah, but I think that should be part of our consideration, right, in terms of viability of the project. But I will say, as somebody who has, had a proposal of 3 out of the 5, and then a 4th very close, to the ward, that really looking at the site is important. And I think we wasted a lot of time and money, with MPA, because we should have known. We should have asked for that up front, right? What economic impact that this would have, on our community, and kind of do a net, calculation for that. And then, along with the marshalling yards, that was an RFP site that was already RFP'd, to another developer, as you know. So I this is way too important. I believe we certainly need to have a casino to generate the revenue that we need for pensions, for police and fire. It's really important that we, make sure that the calculations include labor. And so that was my question as well. Do they?
So, Alderwoman King, do you have a second question? I know that this has come up repeatedly in the first hour and a half, but I want to give you a chance for one other question in round one, please.
Did they answer it, Chairman, and I missed it?
Did they answer it? Regards to the overall.
No, they did not,
economic-
Alderman King.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
So
why don't you just phrase it in one quick sentence about what you want them to answer right now?
Yeah. Do the
I
revenue?
mean, a lot of it is very. Okay.
Do the revenue projections that we're considering in these proposals include, high-paying, quality labor jobs?
Okay. Good. Jenny.
Yes, we as a city asked for all of the bidders to agree to both operating and construction agreements with the unions.
I get that, but do the projections include the cost of those jobs?
And we asked every single one of the bidders to do that. If they didn't include it, then they're not following the requirements of the RFP.
Yeah, but did we check?
Jenny, that sounds like a yes. That sounds like a yes.
I would say it doesn't sound like a yes, but we should definitely clarify that.
Right. But the other question is, why isn't there labor peace agreements and some other questions that could have an economic impact, I think. And I'm assuming if we're going to move forward as a committee, we're going to have some kind of labor agreements in place for both operations and obviously construction.
Yeah. So I think to your point, Chairman, those agreements need to be discussed and they need to be negotiated. And as a part of the evaluation, the city will consider very heavily the agreements that are in place before it is that it proposes something to council. We understand the point that those agreements need to be in place.
Yeah, and I'd like to see kind of those numbers. The last point is that, I'm a little concerned about an operator that would try and exclude minority partnership. And does that give, the city some concern, up front about just, negotiating in good faith?
So what we were communicated was that the reason for the buyout is because the operator, this particular operator you're referring to, which is Bally's, has, specifically provided a lending program to help scale up the investment. So, put another way, if Jenny Bennett wants to put $1,000 into the project, that it's just not just an investment of $1,000, but it's actually now an investment of $1,000 times 100 because of the fact that lending is being provided, and that larger investment would make me a larger part of this project. The intention was not to ultimately, exclude minorities, and so as a result of that, what they've indicated is that when the loan comes due, which every loan has to have a due date, that they would allow the participant to repay the loan from alternative sources and choose to stay in if they wanted to. So that, ultimately it's,
But I've been told, and looking at the assessment, that, the buyout was right when, you start to earn money as a investor. And so anyway, that gives me some pause. Chairman,
thank you, Alderwoman. Okay, we'll get you to round two.
Defer back to you.
Thank you
so much.
Okay. Let me just see. Alderman Lee, since you're around near 78, do you have a quick comment, question?
Yeah.
Alderwoman Nicole Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I echo a lot of the things that my colleagues have already expressed, so I'll get right to the point. I won't have to reiterate everything else. We spoke earlier about demographics and how different demographic groups are being targeted. I'm curious as to how much of the millions of dollars that are going across the border today do each of the bidders see capturing based on their targeted demographics? Obviously, we've got some concerns for my constituents, so that's one. And then the other one is just from a safety perspective. What does the available data tell us about what happens to crime and safety when a casino does open up? And if we've got any of that can be shared. Those are my two main questions.
Sure. As it relates to the second question, we, have taken a look at some research, in particular, this one study out of Harvard, which speaks to the impacts of casinos broadly, both by way of casinos nationwide, but by and large, there's a very different impact of casinos that are in less urban areas than mega casinos, so to speak, in large urban areas. For the casinos that are in large urban areas, by way of public safety, what the study notes is it has actually seen a decrease in crime rate as a result of casinos in the area. There is an increase in population in general, which increases foot traffic, which does increase the number of people in the associated community, but that the crime rate overall decreases in large part because casinos are highly regulated entities. They come with a lot of security, a lot of cameras, and just about the worst place to commit a crime is in the vicinity of a casino. And so, happy to share, that research. Alderman Lee, in terms of your first question about the demographics of the customer base going to Indiana, I'm not sure I follow the question.
So we've talked, I think I've heard a couple of times, and I'm all for keeping revenue in Chicago and not going across the border to Indiana and others. But I've also heard just anecdotally that some of the casinos, in particular Rivers 78, isn't necessarily looking at the residents of Chinatown, Bridgeport, and surrounding areas as their target market, which still leaves for me as an older person in this ward the same dilemma about concerns over gambling addiction from residents in my ward.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering how much of that, like, who are they targeting, and how much are we actually sort of keeping some more of the income that's leaving in the city?
Sure. So I think that the best way to answer that would be to the way that the gravity model that Grant had spoken to evaluates casino traffic. Aroundly about 80% of it comes from local traffic, and then the remaining 20% from non-local traffic, largely tourists and other traffic. The local traffic would end up being a lot about who it is that are taking their gaming, entertainment, and recreation to wherever the nearest casino is, and again in those concentric circles around the site for level of penetration of that recreational demand. And so long story short, there isn't a precision as it relates to an understanding of where it is that those operators would find their casino traffic from. The best we can do is this demographic data that we put into this model that provides those revenue forecasts. Each of the different bidders do have different target customer bases, and those different customer bases, inform their ability to operate a casino in the future. I think the question really becomes for whoever this finalist selection is, how much of it comes from their local customer base, how much comes of it from their national customer base, and that relative mix of operators, which we'll continue to due diligence as we go through this process.
Ready. All right. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going up to committee members. Alderman Mike Rodriguez. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, a couple quick questions. We all know how important this is, so I concur with my colleagues about getting this right. And one of the core areas of getting this right has been brought up a number of times. And I'm glad to hear, and I think the question's been answered, that the city is committed to labor peace and labor peace agreements. I believe that that peace agreement was written into the RFP, but I'm a little worried that none of those agreements have been signed as of yet. So first of all, I just want to reiterate, and I want to hear from Samir or Jenny or both, around the mayor's office stance on labor peace across all casino operations and across all outlets.
And Michael, I think your second question was labor oriented too. So do you want to ask them both at the same time, please?
I think it'll be a follow-up to this, but yes, I'll ask you shortly. Yeah.
Samir or Jenny on that one?
I know, I think Jenny's covered this as well. The reason we put this in the RFP was because we completely understand the importance of good quality jobs and solidarity with the labor community. So I think we're on the same page there, Alderman Rodriguez, and it's going to be incumbent before this comes before the committee. I think, certainly all the bidders are paying attention here today. They hear you all loud and clear, and it sounds like they all have work to do as well in engaging with that community. So it was in the RFP for a reason, and they're all will be busy at work to try and address the feedback that you've brought here today.
And Samir, at what point will the city mandate that those peace agreements be signed and submitted?
I'll jump in for
Yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
It'll be before we introduce a host community agreement to council.
Right, Mike. Next question, Mike.
Last question the last questions to our illustrious chair. Just could you give us a timeline, Mr. Chair, and how you want to move forward? I don't think you said that at the beginning, and I'm just curious if you have that timeline as of yet.
Our hope is our committee working with the mayor's office within the next 2 or 3 months. We basically have made a selection. It has to go back to the Illinois Gaming Board. But again, as Jenny Bennett has talked about, we need to be up and running, have a plan, so to speak, for our fall budget season. Otherwise, we're going to have to find some other alternatives to replace this proposed casino revenue.
And Mr. Chair, I know you have a lot of folks up, so thank you very much for entertaining me. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. Next, Alderman Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question for our consultant. I know that during this whole process, we were getting monthly emails from Gerald about reporting. Do we have to report on this meeting? I'm just curious. To the gaming board? Or is it because it's a public meeting, we're exempt?
I think today's public meeting is exempt from this.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Wait. Before I say that, law is on here. Radatu?
Yes, I'm here, Chairman.
Did you hear Alderman Villegas' question about reporting this to the Illinois Gaming Board?
Would you please repeat the question for me? Sorry.
Bill, you want to repeat it for Radatu, please?
And just a point of clarification, this our outside counsel for IGB might be a better conduit to answer Alderman Villegas. They handle our IGB filings, if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Either one, fine.
Sorry, it's Kim Kopp from Taft again. I apologize. I could certainly answer. I tried to pipe in faster, but I wasn't quick enough on the unmute. I apologize. This meeting here, we would not have to report because it's not with folks that are the operators or the bidders.
Gotcha. Okay.
The communications with them or their representatives or folks working on their behalfs. So no, we don't have to do on this one. So I'll be quiet.
Thank you.
Next.
Thank you. Next question, Gil.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just do want to fill out more paper. I know that we've been shortlisted down to 3. Chairman, is there any way that we could see all 5 and make a decision from all 5, or is it just we're stuck with the 3?
I can.
Samir, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, and as you can imagine, Alderman Villegas, that does have to follow the city's procurement processes, and so we're governed by a pretty tight window as to how the bids are evaluated, that they're all treated even-handedly, and so per the processes both in our procurement and what will come to the special committee and then report it to the IGB. Essentially, we have to make sure we're treating them all even-handedly. The 5 were down selected to 3 based on the initial evaluation and the feedback from all the departments and the outside experts. And so we anticipate there being a further narrowed down field to present to the special committee.
Okay, cool. All right, Chairman, before this not even a question, my statement, I would just hope that the three operators, that they ensure that we are a union city. And so I want to make sure that whether on the construction, on the operating and all that stuff, I know it's been said, but I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there as well. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Villegas. Alderwoman Silverstein.
Thank you, Chairman. And again, I know a lot of questions have been asked, and I am going to be very brief, but I am also going to be joining my colleagues on the importance of a labor peace agreement. I hope the bidders are out there and they're listening. The city is projected to make a lot of money on this, and we need to make sure that the employees have a living wage and are working with the union. So, I'm just voicing my concerns as well, and hope that the bidders are listening. Thank you.
Alderwoman Michelle Smith. Alderwoman Smith. To Alderman Vasquez. Andre.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to add my voice so it's louder and clearer for all the bidders that we want to make sure there's labor peace agreements here, as well as union positions, which I know part of it is. So you mentioned earlier that ideally you're viewing it as a 2 to 3 month process to have something we could present to the larger council. Given that, how many committee hearings are you anticipating to have that conversation within that time?
As many as needed. I don't have a concrete plan at this point. I'll consult with my vice chair and the administration. No, our goal, as we've said, is to, once we make a recommendation in consort with, I believe, the administration, it's still going to have to go through a committee, and there'll be, and then if and when there is a bid selected, they've got a planning process to go through also, whether it's the PD or whatever. All of it has to go to the Illinois State Gaming Board. So our hope is that we'll have some plan for 23 in terms of revenue as we go into our budget season.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and sorry, my apologies.
You know how busy September will be with the budget period. So we'd like to try to get this done in relatively quick order.
How much you want to bet on that? No, I'm just kidding. So I just couldn't help myself. Now, I guess if we're talking 2 to 3 months, because I do understand trying to get it done right, it would seem to me that it almost necessitates more committee hearings just based on the number of questions we're having in this one. So I just wanted to have the proper expectation in our head. I guess the next question, I know it was just answered about what we have to report on. And what was mentioned was because the bidders are not included in this public meeting, we wouldn't have to report on it. If the bidders happen to be included, does that then change it?
Sorry, do you want me to answer that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Kimberly, yeah.
Sorry,
yes.
It's Kim Kopp from Taft again. If the bidders are, public meeting, let's put it this way, all of the public meetings we've had thus far, we, Taft, have put together and made a filing with the Illinois Gaming Board to say that those things have occurred, and saying there's many city staff and personnel and officials that have attended those. So we have been doing that probably as more of a belt and suspenders and safety mechanic than anything else. So I would say yes, if there's public meetings that, if they're these big ones, we do that automatically. So anyone on this doesn't have to. But the rule generally is, or this law generally says, any meetings, whether public or not, that you have where you've had, a give and take and a conversation with the bidders or an applicant for the casino license. Okay. But we've been taking care of the big public ones that we've already had. All of the the community engagement meetings we've already reported on behalf of the city.
Oh, thank you very much for that. I've done a really good job of not engaging with any of them thus far. So glad that it's covered under the umbrella.
Yeah, you have some fellow colleagues who also feel that way, but not a problem.
Yeah, and then absolutely, to wrap up on our end, like obviously it's something that some of us would rather be a million miles away from any casino talk, especially in Chicago. It's a little too boardwalk empire for some of us. But it is clear that in looking at the kind of funding necessary and that can be provided through casino, we want to do our due diligence. And so as things move forward, I'm sure we'll have a number of questions. So I thank y'all for presenting it. I know it's not going to be easy, and I guess I'll see y'all in a couple of days when the next committee hearing is scheduled. Kidding. Thank you, Chairman. Talk to y'all later.
Just as chairman, we've been working on this for probably maybe 6 weeks already. So, it's not like we haven't been working hard with the administration and the communities for sure.
Sorry. I apologize,
question,
Chairman.
yes.
Yeah, are there, I actually had that one written down. Are there going to be more public meetings kind of as we narrow down with the public to talk through it? Like we just had a public safety meeting in person with folks. Will we be having any of that as far as the casinos?
Yes. So, Chairman,
Jenny.
if it's okay for me to respond to that. Yes, we will have more public meetings. And just to remind folks, I know Samir mentioned this, we've had a public survey that was done, we've been really at this process for 2 years. We had a public survey that was done in 2019. We had the Union Gaming report that was done in 2019. We also had the RFI response. We had the RFP response. We had the community hearing in December. We had 3 community hearings in early April. And we are going to continue to have more community hearings as well as we get to a finalist selection. I would emphasize one point that Chairman Tunney made, which is that we very much would like money for the 2023 budget from this casino. And that budget process starts in August. Time is of the essence. We lose, $200 million a year every year, us as a city specifically, but then the state, another $200 million for every year that the casino is not in operation. So it's a lot of money to, to in essence, not be able to generate for the city. In the state.
Thank you. That's why some of us don't want to give out the gas cards. Y'all take care. Bye.
All right. Alderwoman Michelle Harris, and then we'll go back to Alderwoman Smith. So Michelle.
Okay. Hi, thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I would hope that you all would give the aldermen where these projects are going to happen their own private kind of briefing where they can have a chance to go through their questions, get them answered, whether it's through the chair, and then you all sit down and go through all their concerns, rather than for me to personally feel like an alderman who's going to at some point get this project, for me to feel comfortable that the alderman has had that opportunity to kind of vet. Secondly,
good suggestion.
Okay. Then secondly, the site for the temporary, are there temporary sites already located? Are there temporary buildings or hotels, considering our hotels have been suffering? I'd like to know about the temporary sites and if they're located and where they're located.
Okay, yeah. Samir, or who wants to answer that one? Jenny?
Yeah, I can take that one. Thank you, Alderwoman. So on the temporary sites, the 3 operators have proposed their own sites. In the case of River 78, it would be a temporary site on their parcel of land, which could also potentially involve a riverboat. In the case of Hard Rock, they had initially looked at one of the McCormick buildings for which there was some concern. And so they have expressed openness to a potential hotel. And then for the Bally's Tribune site, they've proposed a site, a temporary site, actually where the engagement meeting was held, which is in one of the temporary buildings on that site. In addition to those, the city has looked to your commentary about some of the needs of our hospitality community. And the city has proposed 2 potential sites in the evaluation report. One was the Medina Temple in River North, and the other was the Sheraton, also near River North, as potential sites just based on infrastructure and the floor plates. So those were also looked at.
Okay. So those were my questions. But finally, I'm gonna beat the dead horse. We have to do the labor peace agreements so that everybody can feel comfortable And so that you all could express the importance of that, considering every alderman on the call has mentioned it during this. So that's the end of my questions and comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
Chairman Tunney, I also just wanted to clarify, Alderman Harris, we have held briefings with each of the impacted aldermen and the bidders, and are happy to continue to do so as we move through this process.
I just think that as they move along this process, they're going to get questions that they didn't have at the beginning, that they didn't even think about, that the community is going to continue to bring with them. So even if it's a weekly briefing every week, that they're sitting in a space and they have the opportunity, because at the end of the day, it's their tail wagging in the wind on this in that community. And so I want to feel comfortable that the aldermen who are going to be the recipients of this project have the opportunity to get every question that they need to be answered with. So, because they're bombarded every day with the calls about and the questions. And so they need to be in a spot where they're comfortable answering the questions and talking to their community about it. So even copies of some of these traffic surveys that they probably would not share with the public, but that they would just be able to have, so that they can feel comfortable understanding what the possibility of thousands of new cars look like coming into a war. So I just would feel comfortable for them. I'm sitting here and I'm a little, my seat's a little hot. So I could imagine who the person who's getting this is probably on fire. So thank you all.
No, thank you. It's a good suggestion. Appreciate it. Chair, I think you're on mute.
Alderwoman Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I apologize for not being able to call to respond in the first call. So I do have just a couple questions, which is there is obviously a fair amount of kickback on the current 3 sites. And my question is there an opportunity, and what would the path be to proceeding with one of the other sites?
One of the other sites that were not selected, is that?
Yes.
The 2?
Yes. Bidders 4 and 5, and then I'll have more to say about this. But isn't that a possibility, that all these sites could be turned down, and because there are so many substantial questions, and I share almost all of those questions and concerns.
So if we were to consider the 2 sites that were not selected as part of the finalists, the city would likely have to go back on the procurement process and consider whether we'd have to start this procurement all over again.
Okay.
At which point then it's a fairly significant delay of probably another couple of years of the casino. And as I noted, that's a lot of money.
And Alderman Smith, then just to build off of that, I think when we think about the history of this city and development, we are a city that knows how to build things, as you know. But also, if you look at recent history, any development involving billions of dollars, there's no kind of easy button to that in terms of a site that for which there is uniform consensus and harmony. So you can look at any number of those developments for which there's been challenges and also significant opportunity. So, our main goal here is to really abide by the procurement process and make sure that we're meeting and finding the right balancing act of all the criteria set out in the RFP, which we think we have with these 3 finalists, and they're all very strong bids.
Okay, so let me ask just a couple other questions then. I will say that I and many others have strong objections to casinos that are placed along the Chicago River. It is, okay, we got the Riverwalk, but people have worked for decades to return the Chicago River to the people and to not do what was in fashion, what they built with the original Tribune site, what they did with the Lyric Opera House. The Lyric Opera House was a fancy place built with its back to the river. And a casino, by its nature, except for perhaps some dining, is designed to be built without windows, so you don't know what time it is, and you're going to gamble. Let's just be realistic about it. Everyone's been to Vegas or Atlantic City or anywhere there's a casino. That's exactly what it is. So to allow the building of massive buildings that are being used, frankly, maybe for outdoor dining, 5 months of the year to let people experience them being close to the river. Or maybe it's just that, as you said, there are very few big parcels out there that, P.S., were the subject of very hard negotiated community agreements and development plans, I think is really an abomination for the city. So that then leads me to the lakefront, which is, I having heard from our prior mayor and a bunch of other people that the Lakeside Center either they're being torn down or we needed to put a fancy museum there because it was McCormick Place was so underutilized. Even your figures that talk about 500 events through 2033 amounts to 19 a year. I cannot, and as my understanding that the casino proposal, which for that location, would not take up the entire thing. So I'm just kind of agog at why this has been such an impediment. Soldier Field is in trouble. Bears or no bears, Soldier Field is in trouble. The Lakeside Center is in trouble and in need of massive investment. I don't get it. That the factors that were listed in the city's rejection of that bid, which has all the traffic infrastructure you could ever want, and isn't in anybody's front or backyard, because we expect McCormick Place to be crowded. Why? The whys that I've gotten at this hearing don't seem very strong whys to me.
So, Alderman
All right, let me stop for a second. There's a couple of questions you asked. One is reiterating the going back to square one in terms of five proposals. But I think during the public hearings and the presentations, I think Jenny would agree that these types of casinos for Chicago are not going to be the closed door, window, no windows, single-use type of facilities, that they're going to be more integrated into more retail and outgoing concept. So you want to start with the second one, Betty?
No, I don't. I don't, Tom, because at heart, they make money from people betting on roulettes, wheels, cards, and whatever, and sports. Vegas certainly doesn't have windows in their casinos. They're not designed as entertainment. And that's an entertainment mecca, and that's Vegas.
Okay, let me ask
I'm
Jenny.
sorry, I just don't. I rarely say this to my friends at City Hall. I just don't buy it. So please
Jenny,
explain what the problem is.
So as it relates to the mixed use component of your question, the Department of Planning and Development has put a lot of emphasis on ensuring that there is mixed use of the site and activation of the site for both non-casino patrons as well as casino patrons. One example of that would be, for example, the Ballet site, where the entire first floor is all retail activation and no casino. And then the second floor is where the casino is. And by the way, that casino has all glass around it. It's not an enclosed building. I think many of you on this call understand the rigor that DPD places on designing a project. And that same rigor has been applied and more so to this project, ensure that it's not just a casino, but that it's a development that has, that enhances the architectural significance of many of our other buildings in Chicago. The River 78 site does the same as well. They have a very large Harbor Hall, as well as the Riverfront Terrace, which is intended to have outdoor, music venues and activation. And then the Hard Rock Casino, again, the casino is on the second floor and is intended to create activation on the first floor for those sites. And very importantly, as it relates to the Rivers McCormick proposal, which you noted, and some of the considerations there, the biggest issue that there's a very large evaluation within the report that goes through some of these details. But at a very high level, the biggest issue is that the casino proposal there would in fact take over the entire lakeside site. And so in order to provide an alternative location for MPA, for the conventions that they have in that site, they would need to build a $900 million or so expansion building, which is an estimate that MPA provided. And the value that was provided to MPA was only for roundly about $400 million. So that's $500 million of financing that MPA would have to find in order to make that project work, which makes it very difficult for for MPA to be able to find a solution to that. To your point about the Lakeside Center, they are at 50% occupancy, and for convention centers broadly, maximum occupancy is roundly around 70%, because between the conventions, you need time to be able to move the conventions in and out of the building. So that ultimately there's about $14 billion of economic impact that comes from those conventions at the Lakeside Center that we, in discussions with MPA, were concerned about jeopardizing if there wasn't, two considerations in place. One was a replacement facility in place before you lose the convention center space, but also the contiguous aspect of it. Part of the proposal that was a part of the only a portion of the Lakeside Center was for the temporary casino, and that component ultimately would have had contiguous space with the conventions, which again is what the conventions had noted as a significant concern, that it might impair their operations.
And then
I would like to see that, excuse me, through the chair, could we get that information about the McCormick Place occupancy for the Lakeside Center? Because, that's pretty new news to most of us, that it has 100% occupancy at any moment. But I'd like to.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Samir.
And then in regards to the question about the river, we share this as a priority and completely agree with your points there. Any of these developments, the River 78 development, the Valley Tribune development, would abide by the river design guidelines from DPD. When you think about those two sites, one is kind of a vacant field right now, and then the other is industrial in nature. In both instances, they're talking about river walks, providing community amenities, river design guidelines, in many cases, public activation or retail on that space. So, we think that the river advocates would be at the table, and this would be a use that would be transformed into something that would really harmonize with what they would want to see there as well, in addition to addition of new open space as well on the river.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. That's all my questions.
All righty. Alderman David Moore.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick couple of questions. Is this project subject to them contributing to the NOF fund? And if so, what is the possibly projected amount would go into the NOF fund?
Yeah, Alderman Moore. So on the topic of NOF, the casino developments themselves, like in terms of the gaming floor, are not NOF contributors, because that's NOF is about bonus FAR. However, some of the ancillary developments at the Hard Rock site, at the 78 site, at the Tribune site, should they choose to kind of bonus up their FAR, then that would have the potential to pay into the NOF. And I think in all three instances, that is actively being considered as part of their developments. So while the core casino wouldn't be an NOF contributor, the bonus payments on the ancillary economic development on all three of the sites would have the ability to pay into NOF. But to your topic on NOF, that raises, I think, what Jenny alluded to earlier, which is new community benefits. And, I think we'd be happy to go into more detail on that if that's desired, in addition to the NOF question.
And would that new community benefits, in your thought, be something similar to what the state has with marijuana in terms of the R3?
Jenny, do you want to talk about this?
I'm sorry, Alderman Moore, when you're referring to the R3, which component of it are you?
It's the whole R3, the money from the marijuana, which goes towards grants and really towards development. Or where there's is more violence prevention, but could we do something like that towards development?
So
or
they,
putting it, investing in, communities like Inglewood, Chatham, Pullman, and stuff like that?
so the community benefits that we've negotiated is really at this point a sum of money that we would negotiate, come back to the city. We haven't, gotten as far as to consider how it is that that money would be spent or who would decide the spending of those funds. We're going to look to this body as well as City Council for some feedback around that. And so I think there's flexibility there, just depending on, your feedback here. And then to, what Samir talked about, in addition to the community benefits that we're negotiating, there's also additional, normal industrial development fees, as well as NOF fees, et cetera, that come with any large development that will also help support various community benefits and considerations there too.
Yeah, and when I hear community benefits agreements, and usually it could be different, is usually that surrounding community in which the development is done in. So you're speaking of it in a more broad sense. And if so, again, I understand that I'm focusing on like percentage of revenues. I don't care if that's a certain amount, like if you're over $80 million in profits, I'm just throwing a number out of that. Certain percentage of this goes into a part similar to R3, but not for violence prevention, but for development.
So we could talk about that. I think that the percentage of revenues that the states approved by way of the taxes that we generate are already very high. They were actually higher than what we believe the market could bear. And at this point, in terms of the total tax rate, it's one of the highest in the country. And it's ultimately what generates the $200 or so million a year of revenues that'll come back to us to help support the finances. We are working to negotiate as much as we can by way of community benefits, specifically carved out. And then, as I noted, or as Samir noted, or and others from DPD can comment on, there are these other industrial fees which aren't small for a $2 billion development, which we think will also go to those purposes. So I think that it really ends up becoming about how much money, how, and then ultimately how we decide to spend it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's on our radar, especially not just one time, but ongoing revenues that's coming from this, and how do we, tap into those, some portion of that revenue to go help, develop, communities on the south and west sides of Chicago. That's all. So let's really be thinking about that.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
David, anything else?
That's all, Chairman. Thank you so much.
Right. On the first round, our last person on first round is Alderman Cardenas. George, sorry that we've been delaying
Thank
your.
You. Yeah, I know. Listen, I don't mind. I think I'm learning. A lot of us are in this process that is very complex, and multi-layered presentation. I think at least for me, what would have been very helpful is to have a sort of a summary presentation to look at the sites and all the questions that were asked in the beginning, get to be solved right away.
Did we lose you, George? Or is that just a comment? Because we send out a boatload of information and studies, not answering all the questions, but there was a lot of between the union gaming study, the PowerPoints, the analysis that Jenny put forward to our committee has been distributed to you as a committee member. So, we'll continue to feed you with answers to the questions and more information as we get.
Chairman, I saw all of that, and I think I'm happy with the presentation. I'm just saying that we this is hour 3 now, and a lot of the questions were pretty much what was in the presentation. That's what I'm trying to say. So I don't know I got it, but there's other colleagues that should have gotten it as well. So it saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of explanations. Look, we've been at this for a long time in terms of getting a casino in Chicago, and we're here. And if you were to go back and redo this, because they're not happy with the 3 sides, you got to start all over again, because obviously it would be illegal for us to do anything different. That's just the procurement process, how it works. Once you put up the bids and you go to the next phase, if you were to make any changes, you got to go back to square one. And a lot of us should know that by now. Now, I think that it's very apparent that wherever it lands, we need to have a plan that addresses development, that addresses housing, that addresses some of the periphery things that this is going to need. This is a big lift for all of us. We've never had a casino. This is a first for many of us. I'm in full support because we do need to pay these pensions, but it ought not to be the only thing. We set this expectation that it's going to pay our pensions, but our city needs more than that. The city needs development, needs equity for everybody involved in the city, so we can have everybody prosper, and we can stop the crime that happens on a daily basis in the city. And a lot of that happens because people are shut out for so many generations. So and I'm just making points here. The questions are, what have you thought through? Because there are valid questions about River and where to put it. We're down to 3, and nobody wants this casino all of a sudden. And so I'm a little flummoxed and perplexed as to why we got at this point. So the question is to Jenny Bennett, is that have we missed something in this whole process?
I guess if your question is as it relates to the 3 finalists and where we go from here, and placemaking around that, I'm going to defer to Samir on that. But I think by way of process, we have evaluated a number of different considerations that were laid out in the RFP. The core goals, which includes economic and financial benefit to the city, includes the number of jobs created, includes equity, and within that, community benefits, includes transportation, planning, and design considerations. There is a fairly extensive review that we memorialized within this very, very long and, again, transparent document that discusses all of those proposals. And so, to the extent that, people have additional questions, obviously always happy to answer them, and, would defer to Samir on the, point about the placemaking.
Well, Alderman Cardenas, I think I agree with the comment you made in terms of understanding the importance of this for the economy, for the job creation, for the economic recovery it represents. And, I think the theme of many of the questions today it's an important one just in terms of digging into the various topics where folks have heard concern from their communities. And also, as I mentioned before, anytime you're talking about $1 billion+ development, there are a lot of questions that are answered. I think it's very important that we have this forum to really go through those. But, we really believe that in the midst of a very challenging economic time, to have initially 5 and now 3 finalist bids that represent nearly $2 billion of development and job creation for the city with world-class design, this is an exciting conversation. And we think that these 3 finalists are finalists for a reason. They've gone through a competitive process and they represent viable options for a diversified entertainment district with gaming.
I appreciate that. Now, I'll leave with this. And I think many have said it already. For us to move to the next, step or phase is, we need to have a conversation already laid out for labor, how that they're going to be part of this, not later, but I think at the front end, not the back end. This is a labor town, a union town, and we ought to recognize that from the beginning. I think to do otherwise somehow is misguided. So I appreciate listening to the comments.
Alderman Cardenas. Vice Chair Jason Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, and this is for Jenny. Can you, I don't think we touched on this, but could you kind of go through the financial aspects of each of the proposals and how they line up? And from a revenue perspective, as to what each of these proposed to bring to the city by the 3 sites that we have here.
Sure. So as it relates to the financial evaluation, we laid out a number of different considerations. First was upfront budgetary benefit to the city, which is, as we've talked a lot about today, important before it is that we get into the budget discussions that'll start in August. In addition to that, the city also evaluated, along with its consultant, Union Gaming, evaluated projected revenues for each of those sites based on the gravity model that was discussed a bit earlier in this hearing. We also evaluated the independence of regional casinos, so ultimately the operator, and whether or not there were other casinos in the region where there might be a conflict of interest as it relates to generating maximum revenues at the Chicago casino, which is really the only casino in which the city will generate revenues. We also evaluated time to execution and phasing. So, importantly, once a casino is open, and in particular open at a steady state, that's when we maximize revenues. If it takes a much longer period of time to open that casino, then those are revenues annually that we do not generate for the city. And so that works its way into the proposals in a number of different ways, which includes any intergovernmental agreements that may be needed from other governmental agencies outside of the city, but also the phasing of the projects and exactly when it is those projects come online. We also evaluated public infrastructure investment. So we've asked each of the casino operators to, in essence, pay for the infrastructure that's needed specific to the casino project. And then we also evaluated the financial and operational wherewithal of the company in order to ensure that they could eventually build this project, had the financial wherewithal to build the project and the operational wherewithal to operate the casino. There are a number of different parts of the report that give some more of the specifics around this. But at the end of it, and very importantly, we are still in the process of negotiating those terms. Like I said earlier, I'm not able to really speak to those specific terms and where we are now, but I can speak to what was in the evaluation report by way of each of those items, if that's helpful. There was an upfront payment from Bally's within that proposal. There were no upfront payments for the other two finalists. The revenue numbers are both in the report, but also then as an appendix in the Union Gaming report at the back end of the report. We basically relied a lot on Union Gaming's gravity model. And as a part of the negotiations, some of those terms will change, and we'll also provide an updated revenue forecast there. Then as it relates to, time to execution, by and large, most of the casinos are, opening around the same time. I believe Bally's temporary at this point is expected to open a year earlier than the others. And then as it relates to the independence of operations, Bally's is the only one currently that does not have another casino in the region. And then by way of public investment for infrastructure, all three of the bidders have agreed to, in essence, fund the infrastructure improvements that are related to the casino project itself. I could go into some more detail. I know that was a lot, but hopefully that starts to answer some of your questions. About
Jenny, let me interrupt for a point of information. So, excuse me, Jason, for just a second. So, obviously, the world changed with COVID. We've had a recession in 07, 08. We might have a recession in the next. We have interest rates going in a fast clip up. In terms of the ability, despite all this, to open on time and to not have a temporary situation for 7 or 8 years based on economic conditions, is there any kind of guarantee that regardless of extenuating factors, that this will be on time and able to generate the kind of revenue? The revenue is going to be the revenue, but we don't want to be sitting around with a temporary casino because of factors that may or may not be in control of the casino operator.
Sure. So within the host community agreement, the city is asking for commitments from the operators to build various components of their project by a certain time frame, and also provide a minimum capital investment as well, so that we know that the project that we have been discussing is the project that will get delivered. The result of not building to those commitments ultimately contains certain legal remedies, and so those are what are being discussed at this point. But that ultimately, when it is that we take a finalist to council and submit that and introduce that HCA and the gaming ordinance, that within that document, you would be able to review kind of what's been legally committed to there.
Jason?
Yes, one question. You talked about the need for 2023 revenue, and would you be looking at temporary casino revenue, or what type of revenue are you thinking of, and how much revenue are you thinking that we would garner, or is there something that you can?
Sure, it's largely upfront payment revenue. So in essence, we've asked for an upfront payment from each of the bidders and continue to negotiate that. But that would be the money that we would have for 2023.
So we would be looking for no gaming revenue in 2023.
At this point, no gaming revenue. The operators need a time frame to be able to secure a gaming license, IGP gaming approval, a license approval. And then, at this point, the earliest opening is Q2 of 2023 for the temporary casino. It's conceivable that we may start to see gaming revenues in 23, but we're not budgeting.
Okay. And again, all of the revenue that we would receive from gaming revenue would go theoretically to a lockbox to the police and fire.
So the gaming revenue by statute is required to go to police and fire. There are ancillary revenues such as hotel tax revenues, restaurant tax revenues, income taxes off of the new jobs, sales taxes off of certain purchases. Those are additional revenues that are generated from the economic development from this project, which then would go towards the city. Property tax revenues off of the site itself, all of those revenues would go towards the city's corporate fund.
Okay. My final question, Chairman, is would we consider any type of a bond? Because if we make a selection and they're not moving at the pace they need to move at, what type of penalty or guarantee would we impose or have that they keep them on time and keep them on target?
So that's what we have to negotiate. I don't have specifics for you at this point, but we are working to negotiate what those penalties would look like.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair. On the second round, we have Alderman Dowell, followed by Alderman Cicho Lopez, and then last but not least, Alderman Brendan Riley. So, Alderman Dowell.
Thank you, Chairman. Just have a number of things, some questions. I hope you'll allow me a little bit of time. First of all, I want to say that I am in support of a casino, knowing that we need that in the city to pay for our pension obligations for the police and firemen. So, I've said this up front, I'm for a casino. I think the main question is obviously the location. So the questions that I'm asking are questions that I'm hearing from my constituents and would like to get more information. So what's the infrastructure cost for these three sites?
It depends on the site, and I'm going to start, but really defer to CDOT and Peter Lemon to speak to the specifics of the infrastructure. For the Hard Rock site, there would be a necessary entrance off of Lakeshore Drive in order to be able to accommodate some of the traffic needs. For River 78, there are additional street grid type improvements that would be necessary in order to accommodate the increased traffic.
Jenny, I'm just looking for a number right now. I'm not looking for what it entails. I'd like to know what the numbers are, for Hard Rock, 78, and Bally's, I think that is.
So I don't think we have a number for you because what we've agreed to are the actual infrastructure improvements that are necessary. I don't have estimates on how much those improvements would cost.
All right, so I'd like to be able to get that through the chair. And what are the source of payments for those?
The bidders are going to be paying for those improvements.
So all infrastructure is being paid for by the bidders. The city will have no liability for infrastructure improvements, for making the infrastructure improvements.
Yep.
Okay. The second thing, question came up previously about crime and public safety. And Jenny, you alluded to the Harvard study. And taking a look at that study a little bit. So first of all, it was done in 2005. It's 17 years old. I don't even think that that's a relevant study anymore for the way our society has changed and what we're seeing in terms of public safety issues now across the entire country. So I'm wondering if you have any other more recent data. The second thing is that the 2005 study, you said that it showed no impact, but it actually showed an increase in crime for the first 6 years after a casino goes in, and then it goes down, then the level starts to go down. And I wondered if you could speak to that or acknowledge that information as well.
So what I understand is that there's an increase in crime, but proportionate to the increase in population, that there's a decrease in the crime rate, just to be clear. So, ultimately, if you have more people, there's going to be more, more activity, and that with more activity comes, comes associated criminal activity. But that ultimately proportionate to the number of people that the crime rate decreases. So I don't, and we could go back and, take a look at that some more. We do have other studies that, I don't have them handy, but we have also taken a look at a number of other studies. And by and large, overall, they come up with, pretty much the same answer, which is that, it's ultimately reflective of just the number of people and population in an area.
So the more
Jenny, does Union Gaming want to comment on that?
I'll start. I don't think this is Union Gaming's area of expertise by way of crime and public safety and how it is that it tracks grants. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Jenny, that's definitely not our specialty. I don't have anything to add there.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, Jenny, is that the more dense the area, the more likely the crime rate goes up, right?
Not crime rate, sorry. The more dense, so the crime rate has been seen to go down.
More crimes, I should say.
More crimes, right.
Okay. Fourth, is it possible, and if this is too much work, please tell me, is this a placemaking question? I'm just curious because when I think of casinos that I've been to in my younger days, I think of them as being places near in industrial areas or business areas, not near, you drive through a winding road to get to the location, not near residential communities. And so I'm wondering if if this would be too much work to get a list of, maybe you pick a few states, similar to the state of Illinois or Chicago or whatever. And I'd like to know the zoning around those particular casinos and if they're near residential communities.
Yeah, and Chairman Dow, we can provide that for you. And I will say you see a wide mix in terms of the siting of gaming. In particular, though, in an urban context, one development that I would point you to that kind of addresses the question you've asked is the casino in Sydney, Australia. It's kind of analogous in terms of it's in a very mixed use district. There's residential there. I believe theirs is actually near one of the convention facilities, and Google has a campus there. So it is one of those kind of live, work, play, tourist also zones. And you know, we spent a lot of time looking at dense urban areas around the world that do offer gaming from the standpoint of placemaking that you've just identified. So we can provide you with some other analogs that have gone into some of the planning discussions as the committee has reviewed this.
Okay, thank you, Samir. The other question I have is, do we anticipate having more community meetings?
Yes, there will be more community meetings. So we are anticipating, additional engagement.
Where, not where people have to sit and listen to the presentations for, an hour and a half. But, you could just have a panel where people could just come up to the mic and say, this is my concern. I know you get some of that information through surveys. I know I'm doing my own survey. I know Alderman Riley's talked about a survey he's done. Alderman Cicho Lopez's community has done a survey. But just to hear from the people who would be mostly impacted by this, I think would be helpful.
Okay.
And then lastly, I wanted to also just add my voice to the need to have labor peace agreements on all of these developments. I know that this has come out of almost every member of the committee, and I think we know that if this is not included, this project ain't going nowhere. So I wanted to thank you, Chairman, for how you're running this committee so far, and look forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Well, Chairwoman yourself, I'm a little disappointed that we're using a 2005 study on safety. As much as we've invested in this proposal, that we don't have more updated information. So I know that's not, I haven't seen it. I've seen the top line on it, but I think somebody should have more updated information on safety. I think that would. All right. Alderman Cicho Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a few follow-ups. In terms of, and I'm here just following up the line of questioning, seems that we still a lot of questions around labor agreements, community agreements, you name it. In terms of the timeline, is there really a hard line on how long or the council is going to deliberate on this decision? Or is this a flexible, especially given the number of questions that we continue to see? That's the question in terms of the timeline. I know I heard in the past, maybe this is a 2-month period. I want to know, is this something that can be pushed, or are we talking about hard lines in terms of a time frame?
And so there isn't a hard line. We've been working on it for about a month and a half already. So originally, this idea would be a 2 to 3 month process. We would like to be able to, hopefully within the next month, narrow it down to the 1, and then obviously go through a rigorous process with the nominee, and obviously they've got to go to the state gaming board too.
Thank you, Chairman. I just think, given the number of questions, I hope that because I don't know if in a month will allow us to get to that place. Now, the other question, so that we don't rush it, but the next question, and I talk about, many of our colleagues have talked about revenue, right? As one of the things that we all really hard trying to think about. In terms of the revenue from the casino, are we thinking about, in terms of the pensions in particular, are we thinking about other ways in Springfield in terms of revenue that can help us honor those pensions, or are we really relying entirely on this proposal? So maybe this is for Ms. Sparks, in terms of the budget, and I know this may be for the third quarter of 2023. My concern is, if we rush this decision and we don't have an alternative to honor those pensions, I want to know if we have a plan that in case this gets delayed, we have an alternative to make sure that we honor those pensions.
Well, on the pension question, the session is over. and the city budget will need to be approved before the next legislative session. So I don't know that, there's enough time at this point to be able to execute on a state legislative solution for pensions by the time that we have to go to the fiscal year 2023 budget.
Got it. In terms of, my last comment, in terms of, just my concerns, given the questions that we have, that this is a really time frame, we only have a month and a half, and the fact that we have this. So I really encourage, us as a group, I know that we have many challenges and obligations. I do think that, given what it brings, 165 million to 180 million dollars, whatever the revenue is, we got to think creatively now. How do we tax corporations? How do we tax billionaires that are seeing time after time seem to have a lot of money at their disposal, and they're putting us in really this big predicament? So just thinking about what we need from Springfield, whatever we need to do, I just hope that we take our time, just given the number of questions that we had. So Chairman, Attorney, I know that we talked about it. I hope that we're taking all these questions and truly address them, before we rush any decision. And thank you again for organizing this.
And I know, Brendan, it was supposed to be the final, but I did see Alderman Rod Sawyer, who has not had a chance to ask a question or two. Rod, this is your first round and probably your last round for today.
I only had one came up the last couple of minutes. Very quickly, and I definitely want to hear what Alderman Rodney has to say to close. I heard Ms. Bennett state earlier that they were difficult to have comparisons. I'm assuming American cities our size. And then I just heard Samir talk about Sydney, Australia, which is a substantially larger city than ours, but I'm assuming, and I don't know for a fact, that they're doing gambling well, or are they? And if they are those the types of cities that we should be looking at? Because Chicago is a world-class city, and we should be looking at places that operate these types of establishments all over the world, not just in the United States. So is Sydney one of those cities we should be looking at as a good example on how we should be operating in a grand scheme of things?
I'll start it. I'm sure Samir will have some comments too, but we are looking at those cities in terms of how they operate casinos. I know you mentioned the Sydney example. I think the response to Alderman Riley related to the operational capabilities of the bidders that we have in our finalist pool. And our finalist pool at this point doesn't include an operator that has operated in Asia or Sydney or other places. So mostly just wanted to offer that clarification.
Thank you.
You, Alderman, and wrapping it up for today's meeting, Alderman Brendan Riley. Brendan.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I do have just a couple follow-up questions, and one actually comes off of Alderman Dowell's second round of questioning, and I was a bit concerned to hear that we're relying upon I hadn't actually focused on it, a 2005 study on public safety. I would agree with Alderman Dowell and Chairman Tunney that that is quite dated and certainly doesn't reflect today's realities. But the thing that really concerned me is hearing that incidents of crime go up around these facilities, but we're supposed to feel good that the crime rate actually goes down. For neighborhoods that are currently struggling with upticks in criminal activity, that's not really comforting to hear. So I appreciate you being honest about it. But that's just another concern for folks to have to worry about. I do have a couple questions, and one is I've been getting from my constituents, and I honestly don't know the answer. I've been asked, how did we go from 5 to 3? And I know you've discussed the deliberative process, but who actually did that? Who actually told us as a city council, here are your 3 options? Who made that decision? Was it a small committee? Was it the department chair? Who actually made the decision?
So like with any RFP process, there are a number of folks in a number of departments who have been evaluating this proposal, and the summary of their recommendations are included in the evaluation report. So ultimately, and this was again noted in the RFP that was issued by way of the process and how it is that the selection process would proceed, but that the evaluation committee, which is in essence the aggregation of the evaluations done by a number of departments, made that recommendation in the evaluation report.
But who are the actual people? I mean, are these elected officials? Are these chairmen of department, or sorry, commissioners of departments?
It's basically commissioners of departments plus all of the folks and their teams, all providing their summary of a recommendation in the evaluation report, which has been provided to the mayor as a recommendation for selection.
Okay.
And like the other RFP process, not every single step of a selection process, is reviewed with council until the final selection's made. We, because of the fact that we wanted to provide a transparent process, have, been providing, kind of this information as we go along in every step of the process.
Okay, well, in the interest of transparency, through the chair, I'd like the names of the folks who actually voted to limit our options to 3. Also, it was also mentioned, I think, during Chairman Dowell's second line of questioning on how the sites were selected to be the 3 finalists. And you mentioned in your testimony that the Commissioner of Planning and the Department of Planning did a lot of work vetting this. I can tell you, in my experience as an alderman, I don't know many aldermen who would see it differently. It's not often that a mostly baked development proposal of any type, scope, or scale is brought to us wrapped in a bow, essentially, and we're asked essentially take it or leave it, with some room to negotiate in the margins. I know a number of my colleagues, and certainly me, I spend a lot of time digging through the granular details of these proposals and being very sensitive to the context of the neighborhood. And while we have some very talented people in the Department of Planning, no question, oftentimes there's a disconnect, because while academically these are good urban planners and they know their zoning and their architecture, they don't have that connection to the neighborhood that's impacted and don't know some of the nuances about crime lately or traffic patterns lately, and don't, because they aren't armed with that knowledge, aren't able to push back on a casino operator or developer's proposal. And so that's why I think aldermen that are in or near these casino sites, representing them or representing across the street, are frustrated because we're being brought in on the back end on proposals that have a valuation to them based on the square footage and how the box is built, you name it, the observation towers, which are questionable. And so I just wanted to put that out there. It's not that I certainly am resigned to the fact the city of Chicago is going to have a casino, and we certainly need the money to honor our pension obligations. But Alderman Dowell is right. Location is really super hyper important, because once we approve this, you don't get to take it back. Once this thing's built, it's there for good. And so I hope that the administration is understanding why aldermen feel like they're in a bit of a disadvantage in the process because of the way this was set up. So again, I wanted to put that out there. And I guess, Chairman, I'll finish by just saying that traffic studies, I just want the traffic engineer engaged by the city to do this work is excellent and has done a lot of analysis in and around downtown. I know a number of my colleagues have dealt with him as well. So in no way is this meant as a critique, but I just want to remind all of my colleagues why traffic consultants are engaged. And certainly it's to review traffic data. But usually if they're being paid by a client, it's to come to an eventual conclusion, whether it involves some traffic solutions or not, that this project will not blow up the neighborhood. And so, that's the assignment for this particular consultant, again, who does very, very good work. And if you look at the details, when for Bally's, for example, a lot of the square footage on that site for the casino would be replacing what was to be commercial space. Commercial space is actually the lowest impact traffic-wise throughout the day. There's a couple peak hours. Casino traffic is constant. And layer on top of that a special events venue for concerts and comedy acts and all that stuff. You're talking about a very different animal. And the intensity of use is important. And I eat traffic studies for breakfast because we have so many complex projects in my ward. So I just wanted to flag that. Thank you for answering our questions. And Chairman, I appreciate you having this hearing today.
Thank you, Brendan. And I must have been remiss by not seeing David Morse, but I think he just put his hand up. So David, I'll give you the benefit of 2 minutes.
Thank you. It won't even be that long. Just it's because it was something Alderman Rod Sawyer triggered when he was talking about Australia. I was watching a CBS, national CBS story, and they were talking about I think it was Australia, Amsterdam, I believe it was, how there was an increase in the poverty rate when they had put a casino in. Have we looked at and done all those studies? And if you don't have an answer to that, can somebody at least get that and see if in areas where there is one thing when people make money, but then there's also an increase in the rate of people living below the poverty line. That's what it was when casinos were built. Do we have any information on that at all? Because that just surprised me when they spoke about that on that CBS special.
I don't have any information on poverty rate, but a significant component of this casino is existing gaming recreational activity, which we're trying to bring back to Chicago. We can take a look at the kind of the remaining portion and then how that is that would impact those the poverty rate in different areas and try to see what.
But can you just go look historically at what's happening, like Rod said, in other countries or even in other cities, that when casinos came, did the people living below the poverty line, did that increase? That's all I'm asking. So just have somebody to do that and say, no, it never did, or yes, it did in these areas. That's all I'm asking before, at some point.
Okay.
David. Okay. Jenny, you have texted me that you might have an answer on the fees and the fee authority from the law department or Taft. Okay, could you put it in front of the committee, please?
So I don't have the answer, but I'm going to defer to Kim Kopp, as well as now we have John Sables on as well from Department of Law, who can speak to this.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you all. Didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation to answer the question. I believe it was by Alderman Hopkins had said, what authority did we have for this? In the authority by which we relied relates to the CFO's authority for municipal marketing authority. I believe I've got the right code section. It's 2-32-055. I'll paraphrase what it allows. It allows the CFO to market city assets, including intangible assets and intangible opportunities. We viewed this instance of the city marketing, the city's acceptance of a casino and certification of a casino is required for someone to apply to the gaming board for a casino license. So in this instance, we viewed our marketing of the certification of the proposed sole casino license as a prerequisite to operating the casino in Chicago as our opportunity, and therefore fell within the section code. We imposed the fee in connection with the RFP, as is often done by the chief procurement officer, for example, of the city, does this regularly in RFPs. And in this case, the fee was imposed really for two reasons. The first is to make sure you have a real bidder, right? That someone who does have financial wherewithal can come to this and come to the opportunity and be real about the opportunity. The second is, of course, probably more important as well, but nonetheless, is to reimburse or attempt to reimburse the city for all these extra fees it has from the consultants that it had to engage. So I just wanted to get that code section to the alderman who had asked the question.
Thank you. The thing that I would say in conclusion, just in general, is thank the patience of not only all the city departments, but our committee members and my vice chair. I think a couple of things that going to all the public hearings were that I believe it was Pittsburgh and or Philadelphia that really embarked this whole renaissance of their city. I believe that was brought up, I think, by one of the bidders, maybe it was 78, if I'm not mistaken, in a residential area that spurred a lot of other development, mixed use. The other one, my staff tells me that Potawatomi is in center of Milwaukee. You know, I don't gamble, at least in the casinos. But that being said, and my only other final comment, at least for today, is that both in the 78 and the Valleys presentations, we're both part of a very rigorous process with the community for the plan developments that were approved. What this is a change of use under the PD, which is going to have its ebbs and flows in terms of traffic. But you know, I do want to note that both in 78 and Valleys, that there was a very robust community process involving local alderpersons. You know, whether they're there now or whatever. I just feel that yes, we got engaged in more thoroughly with the impacted alderpersons, but it's not like we're creating something out of nothing. And I just wanted to end with that there's been a lot of work by the Department of Planning and historically on two of the three sites, and we got more work to do. So with that being said, I think I'm going to ask for, what am I going to do? I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Riley so moves.
Riley so moves. Any opposed to it? All right. Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned, and appreciate everyone both publicly and also that involved with our city departments and our alderpersons. Thank you.